Hey everyone, NornQueenAlexis, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the Everything Wrong With series, where we take our favorite sci-fi universe, well, one of them, and tear apart its vehicles, talking about what's good, what's bad, and what's, under the hood.
Yay!
I am joined once again by Sterling.
Hi everyone!
Sterling is a military historian, as well as just a cool dude with years of experience in the military itself.
One of those things is a lie.
Wait, which one of those
the
things?
The cool dude part.
Oh.
I'm just a big nerd.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a
Yeah.
little bit. So today we're looking at Imperial Armor Volume 2, Forces, Space Marine and Forces of the Inquisition, which is funny because the only thing the Inquisition in here is actually the Chimera, which we already covered, the Land Raider Prometheus, which is the coolest name for a Land Raider ever.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they never made a Land Raider Genesis. Like, out of all the cool names to use, you would think the first one, the Phobos, would be called the Genesis.
Maybe Ark and Land just had a different opinion.
Wow. Ark and Land also had a spider monkey that had a scorpion tail.
Yes, because... Because, sometimes archaeology makes you think weird things.
Yep. Like, imagine trying to reconstruct a hippo skull. Have you seen that experiment?
Oh, where they hand animal designers a hippo skull and they come out with this weird reptilian monster with tusks?
Yep.
Yeah, it's great.
And then they do the same with the penguin, and they come out to be these, like, long-necked avians that look like,
yeah,
Quetzalcoatluses.
They do a baboon, and it looks like some sort of, like, lizard dog. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. But this is the second book that came out in this series. This is released in 4th edition. A lot of its lore still carries over to this day, like when we covered the Dreadnought, and pretty much all of it was still the same, and all of it contradicted itself.
Yep.
But today, we are taking a look at one of the most iconic Space Marine vehicles, the Rhino. Boom. I'm not sorry.
Uwu Chapter Master Senpai.
So we'll be covering the Rhino and a few of its variants, trying to get to all of them that are listed in this book. Obviously, we won't get to all of them because there's variations, like the different Whirlwinds, like the Hypronus, the Scorpius.
The Demios pattern. I don't think it's in this one.
No, Demios is in this.
Is it in this one?
Yeah,
okay.
it's actually in here. Wait, where is it? Because I thought this was really, really, really cool. That because this was the transitional period for that model,
there you go.
It's actually listed in here.
Yeah, I still have one of the old first printing Rhinos.
You know what's really funny about them?
They're so tiny.
Well, aside from that, they were made using the same tech that makes, like, Christmas items.
Yes.
The same type of plastic and everything.
Yep, essentially just plastic card.
Yeah, it was ridiculously funny. So, let's go ahead and get into this, and I have a ton of different Rhino variants, including the Repressor battle tank, which is not an actual battle tank, it's an APC. Let's put that off to the side.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
We have a Whirlwind. This is technically the Exorcist, but it's close enough. It covers the same thing.
Yep.
Okay. Then we have the Predator Annihilator, because this is my favorite configuration of a tank.
Yep. All las cannons all day.
I honestly think this is the best way, practically, to run it.
Sure.
Then
it's an old standby.
Yeah. Then we have the brand new Exorcist, which is not painted yet. I apologize about that.
For shame.
I know, I've been busy.
It's your combat organ. You got this, though.
Yeah, but I also have those 3 painted.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so, and this thing is very, 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 very
Intricate,
detailed.
Yeah.
So I want to take my time with it, and I got 3 of them. So, there we go. So, there should be lore on the Rhino, which is always hilarious. Oh, there's a lot. So,
there's a chunk. All right.
Let's get into this.
All right.
Oh, they already call it an APC right off the bat.
Yeah, the Rhino Armored Personnel Carrier. So, let's start with the definition, because this is something that actually comes up quite a bit when we talk about armored vehicles. Armored personnel carrier versus infantry fighting vehicle.
Versus the definition of a tank.
Versus the definition of a tank, yeah. Essentially what you come down to is it is a question of how big of a gun is placed on top of one. In the modern day, we had a treaty between the Soviet Union, now known as Russia, and the United States, where we kind of defined this is what a tank is, this is what a infantry fighting vehicle is, and this is what APC is. And it essentially just came down to, like, if it is unarmed up to a 20mm cannon, it is an APC. If it had a 20mm cannon up to, I want to say it was a 75mm cannon, it was an infantry fighting vehicle. And if it was over 75, it was a tank.
Now, to put that into perspective for Warhammer 40k, that would be the equivalent of a regular Chimera.
Chimera would be infantry fighting vehicle, because it can take an autocannon.
Yes. But an APC would be a Rhino, which only has the Stormbolter and Hunter Killer missile.
Yeah, and then a Razorback would be anything slightly above that, and then a proper tank would be anything with...
The Predator.
The Predator would be a proper tank.
All right.
Okay, so the Rhino Armored Personnel Carrier is a mainstay of Space Marine chapters. Since the Great Crusade, it has provided armored transport to the fighting forces of the Imperium, carrying them safely to their objectives at the forefront of battle, bringing swift retribution to the enemies of mankind. Robust and versatile, capable of withstanding the most hostile of environments, the Rhino has become the basic squad transport vehicle of all Space Marine chapters. It also sees service with other trusted fighting arms of the Imperium, such as the Adeptus Sororitas, Adeptus Arbites, and the Inquisition. Let's see. History.
So wait, let's just talk about this really quickly.
Yes.
So this means that the same pattern is used for all of them? Mm-hmm. For the most part. Now, there's probably variations that have been used and adaptations, as we can see, with the variants and how the Rhinos for the Sororitas are different. They're more gaudy and more overdone.
And you can imagine that there's probably changes in how the loadouts are set up, the different kinds of standard equipment you'd find within them, and even just how seats are going to be configured, because an Adeptus Arbites force does not take up the same amount of space as 10 Space Marines do.
Yep.
So you have to factor some of those things into this, and then also it's Inquisition, so that it could be whatever they want riding inside that vehicle. And this holds true for a lot of just baseline chassis, is there's a million different variations, and almost all of them have a designator attached to them. So it becomes a real nightmare figuring out which one you're looking at. Yeah.
But if they all use the same parts, they're pretty easy to repair.
Yeah, being ubiquitous is kind of a virtue in and of itself. As long as everything works the way it should, and you can get a steady supply of parts and replacements, there's no reason to not just base everything off the same chassis. It makes manufacturing easy, it makes repairs easy, and it makes training easy.
Yeah. Since Space Marines, Sisters, even Arbites, okay, so let me talk about this, the Scala Progenium, for a second. Space Marines are not trained in a Scala Progenium. That's why Space Marines are viewed as kind of dumb. They're super smart. They can
college educated.
Yeah, they can process information super fast, but they're not college educated like the Adeptus Arbites and the Adeptus Sororitas. They are trained in different variations of battle and negotiations, as well as like crowd control, leadership roles, and things of that nature. Space Marines have their own variant depending on the chapter, of course, and they're left more to their own devices. But because of that, I would say that more than likely, the Inquisition, the Sisters, and the Arbites probably know the vehicle a little bit better.
Yeah, more than likely, they also, because they are not standard Space Marines, like Space Marine chapters would have the serfs, the chapter serfs, and the tech marines, and the Master of the Forge servicing all the vehicles and preparing everything for them. More than likely, you have a base entry-level mechanic within your unit if you're a standard human. then you have access to the Adeptus Mechanicus, who can come in and do specialized repairs and maintenance on all of your vehicles.
Now, we do also know that that is 100% true. The Imperial Guard do know how to repair their vehicles, unless they're severely damaged, in which case they call in the Mechanicus to come in and do the field repairs. But for the most part, if an engine stalls or a track needs to be replaced or basic service to a vehicle, the Imperial Guard can actually do that themselves. There's an entire regiment that specializes in it.
Yep.
What is that? The...
No.
Mordians?
I think isn't the Vostroyans?
Yes, it's the Vostroyans.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah.
But yeah, and that's something that you see in the real world. There's maintenance that's just considered operator level, so that's the driver can do these things. Beyond that, there's things a mechanic can do, then there's things a specialized mechanic can do, and then there's things that, essentially there's one person on the base who knows how to fix this thing. Go take it to him and he'll fix it for you.
Yep. Also, interesting side note, and I know we're literally on the first paragraph talking about all the lore.
Yep.
Did you know Tech Marines have servants under them as well?
Yes.
And they actually don't count towards the number of Marines in a chapter. Mm-hmm. So you can actually have 100 Tech Marines in a chapter.
Yep. It makes sense when you look at some of the more tech-heavy chapters, like the Iron Hands, because with all of their bionics and everybody essentially having some form of like augmentic enhancement that's not standard, you would need so many support staff just to keep them running.
Yep. Now, the one thing I wish they would bring for the sisters is their version of a tech priest. It's it has a name. It's in the ordo. It's in the minor ordos. Mm-hmm. They're attached to the sisters. Oh my God, they're tech heavy. They also train the Dialogus. Is one of the biggest things. Mm. But they're essentially just a bunch of tech priests that are all women.
Yeah.
And identify as women in order to join the orders.
Yep.
And that's actually a really big thing is with tech priests. They normally don't identify as male or female.
Yep. But, ecclesiarchal doctrine.
Yeah.
You can't have men in this. Okay.
Also, the sisters are just rude to men. Like, they won't let them in their transports or anything.
I mean...
They're more like Amazons in that case. Would you?
I don't think I would. If I had the choice to kick somebody out, I would probably just kick people out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Like, I don't like anybody riding in a vehicle of mine unless I know them, it's just not a thing. All right, let's move on. We got a lot to cover, it looks like.
Yeah.
All right, history. The Rhino armored personnel carrier has been an Imperial surface for over 10,000 years. But its origins lie further back still, in the depths of humanity's past. Unusually, the surviving documents on the origins of the Rhino are almost complete and give an accurate early history of the vehicle.
Well, that's convenient.
It is. So, ancient records show that the Rhino started life as the RH-1NO, Rhino, tracked exploration and multi-purpose defense vehicle, a standard template construct for use by colonists and explorers as mankind spread throughout the galaxy colonizing worlds.
Now, I think that's where the misconception of it being a tractor comes in.
Yeah.
These things are not tractors.
Yeah, no. Tracked just means it has treads on it. That's all it is.
Most tractors aren't tractors.
Yeah, let's not get into that today. All right, so let's see. They need a robust, tracked, all-terrain vehicle sealed against hostile environments and providing some measure of protection and defense. The first Rhino... Whoa!
Sorry, I just kicked the camera. I'm so good at this.
Arizona earthquake.
Let's go ahead and fix that real quick. There we go. Boom.
There we go.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Let's see. The first Rhino was field tested on Mars and proved a great success, capable of being constructed from any locally available material and powered by any fuel source. The popularity of the Rhino spread. Yeah, it helps when you can just throw anything in there and it will run.
Now, I'm assuming it means that it's kind of like the same engines that we see in certain tanks, where you can throw raw fuel into it. And power.
A lot of military vehicles, even in the modern day, are able to run off of different fuel mixes. Things like the Humvee, the high mobility multi-wheeled vehicle, you can run it off of essentially diesel fuel. JP8, which is a jet fuel mixture. In extreme circumstances, you can run it off of just standard gasoline and kerosene and stuff like that.
Can you run it off of Coca-Cola?
No, and the only reason I know this is because there was an act of vandalism on the base once where somebody did pour, like, Coca-Cola into a gas tank, and the sugar will actually caramelize and ruin the engine.
Because I know as an emergency, you can run a car on Coca-Cola.
Yeah, in an extreme emergency, you don't get far, though.
No, but if you're stuck in the desert and that's all you have...
Yeah, I mean, sugar is naturally combustible. Do not try that at home. You just take my word on that one. You'd be surprised what kind of stuff you can use to fuel a machine. And just having it be super durable and be versatile is a great asset. Now, let's see. Soon, rhinos became common sights on the frontier worlds of the rapidly expanding circle of human worlds. As well as a vehicle for exploration, the rhino's military potential was soon recognized. The armed forces began to adopt the design, fitting it with weapons and extra armor for combat. The rhino, and its many variants, eventually became the standard armored vehicle of human armies. As these armies spread throughout the galaxy, they took the rhino with them. The rhino's position of dominance came to an end during the Age of Strife. Dun dun dun. As mankind's golden age of exploration and expansion ended in bloody warfare, which engulfed every human colony. By the end of the Age of Strife, and the emergence of the new Emperor, most STC systems had been lost or destroyed. Attrition took its toll on the rhinos scattered throughout the galaxy. Knowledge of their design and the secrets of their construction was only saved by the work and dedication of the newly formed Adeptus Mechanicus, who sought to...
That's been retconned.
Yep, that has been retconned. Let's see. They sought to gather all the remaining STC technology into their care, and the tech marines of the newly created Space Marine Legions. The reliability and durability of the original Rhino design means that it has changed very little over the intervening years.
Okay, so there's a lot there that I need to talk about. One, this talks about the Age of Strife, which originally only affected Earth.
Yes.
Now it affects every single colony, which makes it make more sense, to be honest. Although galactic-wide warfare between a single species against itself, I don't think that would happen planet to planet when most planets didn't have communications with each other.
Yeah,
That would have to be one hell of an idea.
Well, what makes this really interesting is this means that the Rhino is technically Dark Age of technology.
Yeah.
So, who knows what it actually is made of.
Yeah. It also talks about everyone just stopped fighting when the Emperor appeared. Just, hi, there's the Emperor. Oh, wow, let's stop fighting. God's here.
I mean,
it does establish what the Adeptus Mechanicus does. We now know is the Mechanicum at the time. No, it's the Mechanicus at the time, Mechanicum now,
yes.
Right? Yeah. And they do still go after STCs. They hoard them.
Yep.
Some Space Marine chapters do as well.
Those are the Explorator Dominuses with their Explorator fleets. There's a lot to unpack when you talk about the Adeptus Mechanicus and how it has evolved in the canon over the years. Initially, they were just this like strange little support group. Then they turned into a secondary religion that's not a religion, but it definitely is. To now they are what you see today. You know, corrupted by the Void Dragon and kind of turned around and thrown back out into the world.
We don't know if they're corrupted by the Void Dragon anymore because
that also is subject to interpretation.
Well, it's subject to interpretation, got changed from 3rd edition. Everything from 3rd edition is retconned now.
I think that's important to bring up to folks, is that, like, Games Workshop and Black Library, their publishing house, have a massive stable of people who work for them, and not everybody has the same vision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what's always kind of been, the charm of Warhammer 40k, is that lore is distorted through the lens of time. Everybody who grows up in America learns the story where George Washington chopped down his cherry tree.
I hate that that's true.
But it's not.
Yeah.
That's
no. I mean that it's true that
people learn
everyone's
that.
taught that.
Yeah. The fact that it's an allegorical tale, people learn it and they accept it as doctrine, and it becomes this misconception of like, oh yeah, no, this is totally a thing that happened, rather than a campaigning device. So that was just 300 years ago, almost. We are talking tens of thousands of years across the gulf between stars to distort information.
Yeah.
So...
Like, keep in mind, they can still pick up astropathic messages sent thousands of years ago.
Yeah, time travel exists. You jump into the warp, you could reappear before you left.
And then steal a copy of your favorite shooter from yourself that you kill.
I mean, yeah, that is true.
And the confusion stops the entire wad in its tracks.
And then you just grandfather paradox yourself. Like, there's so many weird things about how the 40K universe works, and it's important to recognize that every source is technically as valid as every other if you're willing to push the goalpost and make that argument. But for the sake of this, we're going off of just what's in the books that we have in front of us and the most up-to-date stuff.
Yep. Remember, everything is canon, but not everything is true.
Yep. Truth is a matter of perspective.
Finally, somebody else that says that.
All right. There is one last thing I want to point out. And this is something that comes up in a lot of sci-fi universes, is there's never a good explanation for why something stays the same technologically for thousands of years, millennia even.
Yeah.
Technology does just plateau. We see this in the real world. We see it in just how humans design things. If something works, and it works real well, there's no reason to change it. It takes effort to change stuff. And if you're going to innovate, you must innovate in such a way that it blows the competition out of the water.
Such as the new grav tanks versus the Rhino.
Yeah, and this is something that we can see in the real world, and we'll talk on this a little bit later when we get to the stats on the vehicle, but it is a very real issue of this thing may be old. It may even be almost ancient, but it still works.
It's kind of, again, it boils down to it being a morale thing.
It's also just a practicality. Like, if I can make something run for 1,000 years and never have to update it, all right, why do I need to invest into building a new one?
Like, my comparison would be the A10 Warthog. Technically, it's obsolete.
Oh, yeah. And the Rhino's real-world equivalent was built in the 1960s. The U.S. military still uses it.
Yep.
Because everything that we've tried to make make it obsolete just doesn't do enough for the price tag.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll hit that later. All right, let's see. Where were we? Last paragraph of history. Today, only the most trusted Imperial organizations have access to Rhinos.
So the ones mentioned before.
Yep. The technology involved in their construction is too valuable to risk with any but the most loyal of troops. The Adeptus Astartes, Adeptus Sororitas, Adeptus Arbites, and the Orders of the Inquisition all use Rhinos as their principal armored transport vehicle.
Most trusted Inquisition.
Yep, it's
just saying.
Well, if it is the most ubiquitous and the most useful thing ever, yeah, that's why you don't give it to Imperial Guard regiments.
Yep.
Because a Guard regiment can turn traitor.
But prior to that, the Rhino was used by the Imperial Guard. Or the Solar Auxilia, as they're known.
Yeah, Solar Auxilia.
They were the Solar Auxilia, and then they were the, oh god, what is their 30k name? It's the Imperial Army.
That's Solar Auxilia, yeah.
Oh, okay. Then what's their 40k name?
Astra Militarum?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, there we go.
Because that's the organization.
I know them as the Guard.
Yeah. Solar Auxilia is still their branch title, like the title of everything. Then it breaks down to their officers, then it breaks down to their standing armies, and then their auxiliary troops, and then their armory.
Yep.
And the Solar Auxilia is all of it. The
Militarum is the ground troops.
Yep. Militarum Tempestus is, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Service record. The earliest known use of the Rhino in combat is recorded in the ancient Liber Armorium. According to the August document, it was by human colonists on Torben's world against unidentified indigenous Xenos creatures of a primitive technology level. The Rhinos formed the spearhead of the human colonists' attack, against which the primitive aliens' firearms were useless.
Take that, you crude bastards.
The Rhinos smashed the alien settlements, and Torben's world was completely purged of the Xenos, leaving the colonization to progress unimpeded. Over the following 100 years, use of the Rhinos spread to human military forces. Early commanders adopted the basic chassis design as an armored fighting vehicle, fitting various weapon systems and augmenting the vehicle's engine power. In time, the Rhino became the standard transport of mankind's fighting forces. STC systems provided early armies with many Rhino variants, still in use today, such as Predators, Immolators, and Whirlwinds. Many other variants are now lost in the depths of time.
I didn't bring an immolator. Oops.
I don't know if I've ever owned an Immolator.
I own like 11 of them.
Yeah, that sounds like you.
Yeah.
Let's see. The oldest recorded Rhino belongs to the Salamanders chapter.
That makes sense.
Yeah, not shocking. It's called Nocturne's Hammer. It is said to have carried Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders, into battle.
Funny that he can't even fit in it.
Yeah, right? It served the chapter for 8,000 years before being placed in the chapter's reliquary on their homeworld Prometheus, where it still resides. At the start of each new century, the rune of activation is struck upon the engine. Should the engine fail to ignite, it is seen as a bad omen for the chapter's fortune in the coming century.
So it's just like starting a car in the winter.
Yeah, so in the U.S. Army, there's a thing called Motor Pool Monday. You take the entire unit, they go down to the motor pool, and then you leave enough guys behind to knock out all the maintenance and everything. A lot of the maintenance does just involve, especially in the wintertime, turning the thing on. Just so that the batteries don't drain, that the engine doesn't seize up. And it's a practical thing. I do love that they point out that it served for 8,000 years, because there's this really cool story that just kind of happened in military history. The oldest M2 Browning 50 cal machine gun was officially retired.
Okay.
It was one of the first ones ever built. It served through World War I all the way up till Afghanistan.
Holy crap.
Yeah. The only reason they're retiring it is because it would cost so much to repair it that they would rather just refurbish it into a museum piece and retire it honorably. I believe it's a Marine Corps 50 caliber as well.
Aw, so they're really tied to it.
Yeah, it's a lot of like tradition does kind of get built up into this. It was really funny when they first found it because like they thought that something was wrong. Like they thought 6 numbers off the serial number were just missing. So they thought, oh no, this is terrible. We have no idea. But then they found out, no, it really is like a 3-4 digit serial number.
Huh.
Because it is just that old. When a piece of technology works, it just works.
Oh yeah, we do have to point out that Marines are no longer using tanks.
Yes, yeah. The Marine Corps lost all of their tankers. They were given the option to leave the service or transition to the Army, because, you know... I will keep my opinions on that to myself. But for any Jarhead tankers out there, I am so sorry. But welcome to the Army.
Yeah.
We have jackets.
And keep in mind that is a recent change. You can actually... I wish we had a link or something to show that.
Yeah, you should be able to just find it searching the Army Times, which is the official in-Army newspaper, which is available to the general public. I remember they ran a story about that a few months ago.
Okay.
But yeah. Alright, moving on. Notable features. Due to its STC roots, the Rhino can be constructed using locally available materials. Most Rhinos are constructed of a bonded ceramite layer over a cast plasteel hull, although others use composite carbon compounds or conventional hardened steel, depending on their origin. A Rhino's engine can run on almost any combustible fuel. A Rhino is crewed by a single Space Marine driver who also controls the remotely operated Storm Bolter, although a pintle-mounted weapon can also be operated directly by a passenger from the gunner's hatch.
Does that mean all Rhinos have a Space Marine in it?
All Rhinos? Well, I
the way
feel
it's
like
said.
the way that's said, I feel like that can't be right. I feel like that's just bad grammar.
What about the Sisters of Battle? There's just a Space Marine in there.
I find it really hard to believe that the Adeptus Arbites have Space Marines driving them around. Like, oh, that would be terrifying. Like, just a
A literal
Like
angel driving your vehicle.
A Necromunda gang just gets, like raided by the Adeptus Arbites one day for reaching too far. And a Space Marine gets out of the Rhino.
It's all fun and games until the Space Marine gets out of the Rhino.
Yeah, it's just, you're done.
Yeah. Well, if anything,
Yeah.
that proves canon that there's female Space Marines.
Oh, good lord. Good
All right,
lord.
we're
Moving
not
on,
getting
moving
into
on. Why would you? I sense a great disturbance in the comments.
You know, somebody is sitting there like, actually, it's written like this.
With 3 M's. All right. All Space Marines are taught to operate the Rhino as part of their training. Within its armored hull, a Rhino can carry up to 10 fully armed Space Marines in power armor. Access is via 4 doors and hatches. The rear hydraulic ramp and 2 side doors provide for rapid disembarkation of a squad. The armored top hatch can be opened to allow passengers to fire their weapons and also provides a rapid exit in the event of a catastrophic hit or a rollover, for that matter.
Yeah.
The Rhino is powered by 4 Mark II Mars pattern adaptable thermic combustor reaction engines. Each engine runs a dynamo, which in turn powers 2 electric motors and recharges the engine's batteries. Each dynamo is attached to the motor via power coupling and is independent of the other engines. Should an engine be damaged, then there will be a reduction in power, but the motor will continue to turn the drive wheel. Even if both engines on one side are lost, power from the other side can continue to provide power to both drive wheels through the auxiliary drive shaft and a lockable differential. This will slow the vehicle down to about half maximum speed. Even if all engines are lost, the electrical power stored in the batteries can be diverted to the auxiliary electrical motors to keep the Rhino mobile for a short period of time. This system means the Rhino is able to keep moving despite damage which would cripple almost any other vehicle. The engines are fed by a fan-assisted air intake, providing the oxygen for the combustion chamber. Each engine has its own fuel tank and also an oxygen supply. This means that should there be no oxygen, or the environment requires the air intakes to be sealed, such as deep wading through water or on an airless world, the engines still have the oxygen they require. Bring forth the model. All right. Space Marine vehicles are kind of cool. These little smokestacks, that's your engines.
Yep.
Yep. So
unlike the you can just take the weapon off. I don't need that on. But unlike the traditional Chimera, which has all of its engines in the back and one Molotov can take it out, this thing can't be taken out by 4 Molotovs, yes, but...
Yeah, it's overheating is probably not going to be as much of an issue because it's a thermic combustion, so...
This thing's running off of nuclear power.
Essentially, it is just burning extra fuel to run a dynamo, so that just means that something inside is attached to something else, which lets a fan spin. That fan is connected to a shaft, which more than likely spins, in a traditional dynamo, electromagnet around a coil of copper wire to create a current, and that current goes into the batteries, and the batteries are what actually run the motors. Very basic technology. You could essentially build this engine system now with 4 independent engines all working together in sequence. And the fact that even canonically, they're all cross-wired with each other so that one engine can distribute power to all the others. It's a really cool concept. Mm-hmm. I like it quite a bit. The idea that it carries a separate oxygen system, just in case it has to afford to cross rivers or into deep water or it's on an airless world, that's a smart little detail that they add to show that, hey, this thing works like a standard combustion engine, it needs oxygen to run.
As dumb as it is, this thing can also be a submarine. That's actually in the lore.
Yep.
It just sinks to the bottom and just drives.
Yep.
Because 40K,
why wouldn't you?
Because 40K would deploy a tactical squad in a Rhino under the ocean.
under the sea.
I mean,
And that's all we can use of that.
in all fairness, it would be a complete surprise to anybody on the land.
Yes, no, that would stun me if I'm sitting there looking out over a peaceful ocean and just a bunch of blood angels in a rhino come like rolling up out of the surf. Just like, I think we're done for, boys.
D-Day was all fun and games until the blood angels showed up.
Yes, I forgot the completely historically accurate taking of Juno Beach by a Death Company Marine. Oh, man.
I wonder how many Space Marines would logically die during that. With enough heavy weapons.
I'd have to sit down and figure it out, honestly.
Yeah,
But
because...
I will have a lot of free time coming up because the semester is ending, so once I'm done with grading, I will be able to actually do that. So, stay tuned for that, I guess. Yeah.
What happens if they roll out as freaking assault marine just jumping out of the water?
Yeah.
Nobody would expect that.
Do the Normandy fortifications stand a chance against assault marines with jump packs? Ooh. I'll figure this out.
And keep in mind that 1 in every 10 is carrying a melt-a-bomb.
Yeah, melt-a-bombs. Someone's got a thunderhammer, I'm sure.
Well, no, the sergeant has power weapons. I don't know if he can get a thunderhammer.
The Vanguard vets can.
Yeah. Or assuming the first company's there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a different story.
Does D-Day go the same way if there are Terminators involved?
Teleporting from... This is...
Oh, good lord, focus.
We're good. Okay.
Okay, but yeah, no, so the engine system's real cool.
How did we get to Space Marine storming Normandy?
Submersible rhinos, I believe, was how we got that way.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's just kind of cool that someone put the effort into explaining how the power system works. That's not something we've had in any of the other vehicles. It's just like, oh yeah, no, it runs on this crazy engine. This is like, no, it's a combustion engine that works essentially by the same principle a modern day engine does. It charges up batteries and motors via the use of a dynamo to turn their chemical potential energy into electrical energy, and then they use that to actually run everything, which that's just really cool.
Yeah, I like that.
A nerd moment for me. Which, yeah, that's how a standard vehicle works. There are vehicles that have multiple engine banks and multiple motors and whatnot, but it's not super common just because it adds complexity. Like, yeah, you have redundancy, but the system's a lot more complex when you have to maintain 4 engines as opposed to one big one. But anyways, construction. A whole section just on it, Alexis. Are you ready?
My body is ready for this.
All right. The Adeptus Mechanicus have established strict guidelines ruling the construction and maintenance of these valuable vehicles. The purity and spiritual welfare of the vehicle's machine soul is thought to be as important as the skill of the artificers who built the vehicle. There are many rituals surrounding the construction, maintenance, and use of rhinos. They must be cared for using the correct liturgies of maintenance, divined from the runes of engineering, and the machine spirit must be blessed to protect both the vehicle and its occupants in battle.
So I've always wondered about this.
Yeah.
I think whenever they talk about, like, the ruins that they read on papers and everything like that...
Yeah, the runes.
I think it's just English.
Yeah. That's always kind of what my headcanon has been.
Yeah, I think they're just reading an instruction manual from English because they speak a mixture of French, German, and Latin.
Yeah. That would just make sense. Like, the runes are these strange archaic things. Or it could honestly be just like the simple universal symbols. Like, everyone knows what the power symbol looks like. Whereas just,
Yep.
Rune of activation. There you go. There's a whole science to studying iconography and creating iconography. It's why, like, when you see the biohazard symbol, you know it's like, oh, danger. That doesn't look like something I want to be near.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he got it already. Oh,
Wow.
cool.
Good job.
We'll
I didn't have to pause.
Just leave that in.
Well, there's what I like about it is the runes can actually be confusing to people, which could be the interpretation of language like English being one of the most complex languages. And yes, there are more complex languages we know, but with English, there's words that can mean multiple things.
It's very freeform, which is very frustrating, and especially just sentence structure in English. You can flip a lot of things around, and they don't necessarily have to be next to each other. And it's still it's a sentence. It may not be a good one, but still a sentence. An example of this that I definitely think about all the time is there are these things called glow plugs inside of diesel engines. It's essentially your spark plug.
Yep.
But they need to heat up before they can actually initiate the first reaction. So there's multiple positions in a Humvee's control switch. Which, yes, there's no keys for Humvees. So if you're going into the military and someone says, hey, go find the Humvee keys, they're messing with you.
It's like when somebody asked me to find blinker fluid.
Yes, exactly. It's 100% that. It's one of the most fun things you can do to a new soldier, is send them on a wild goose chase.
I guarantee, like, the other military officials that they ask would just direct them somewhere else instead of correcting them.
Yes, yeah, that's what you do. It's a rite of passage. It's straight up hazing, but you know what, everyone, it happens. The best thing you can do is be light-spirited about it. But anyways, so when you're sitting inside a Humvee, there's a little switch on like the left-hand side of the steering wheel. So, and it's got 3 positions, and I just have to remember. It's technically 4 positions, and there's just like a big old switch that just like sits on the side, and one of the switches will be for off. One will be for like to start, like to warm up the glow plugs. Another one will be running / on, and then the other one will be start. Actually start the engine.
Okay.
So you have to flick it. There will be a little light that sits there. And you wait for the light to turn on to show that, like, okay, the glow plugs are warm enough to actually start the reaction in the engine. You flick it all the way to the run. As soon as you hear the engine catch, you let go, and it will just sit on the on.
Okay.
So, like, there are all the words and everything. I can't remember the exact order. I remember that run is definitely on the right-hand side because it flicks back to just being on. But, yeah, you could easily get confused, and I've seen it happen so many times where a new soldier doesn't know what to do when they get into a vehicle, and they just try to turn it on straight away.
Yep.
And the engine chokes up. And they panic because they're like, I think I broke it. It's like, no, you didn't. You're being stupid.
It actually reminds me of starting a weed whacker.
Yeah, like, there's...
You have to pump it first until it's ready, then you have to switch it all the way, then you have to pull it, and then you immediately have to switch it back.
Yeah, you never think about how complicated some machines are to start until it's like, all right, explain it to someone over the phone who, like, can't read any of the symbols that are on it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can get quite ridiculous. All right, so let's see. Where were we? Oh, here we are. Like all Space Marine vehicles, the construction of a Rhino is more akin to a religious ritual. At every stage, the correct oils must be applied and incense burnt to sanctify the process and ward off demons and gremlins from getting into the vehicle and working their mischief.
Wait, does it actually say gremlins?
Gremlins, right there. As they are cast, each armored panel is inscribed with protective sigils to ward against damage and help protect its future passengers. Components are checked and blessed before being installed. Finally, when the Rhino is complete, the ceremony of commissioning is prepared. The Tech Marine builder calls upon the spirit of the machine god to invest the new Rhino with power. 3 times the runes of activation are hammered onto the engine block.
Wait, it's quite literally you're pumping the vehicle to work.
You gotta prime it.
Oh my god.
The engine is fired as the 3rd blow is struck.
Yep, there it is.
If it roars into life first time, then it is a good omen. The vehicle will live a long and useful life. The final blessing is the naming ritual. A new vehicle must have a battle name worthy of the chapter's great history. This name is recorded, and some chapters choose to paint or engrave it onto the Rhino.
We painted this one onto it.
There we go.
It's got a name. Its name is Ren.
Once in service, each Rhino continues to be maintained by a chapter's tech marines and the artificers of the chapter forges. They repair battle damage, although battle scars are worn with pride.
Why?
I don't know. Let's see. And see that the vehicles are honored with litanies of battle. Old vehicles become revered items, holy relics of the chapter, and can even be retired from frontline service, being kept only for routine transport or ceremonial duties.
So, I think halfway through this, there's a different writer. Because in this part of it, they're definitely talking about it being used by everything. The second it goes to here, it's just Space Marines.
It definitely got lost in translation.
Yeah. Because I know the sisters do all of this crap, too.
Yeah.
But
hey, crap, this is them following the manual, Alexis. You always follow the manual.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do. Because if something goes wrong with this vehicle, I want to be able to point to somebody else.
No, you point to the gremlin that stopped it from working.
But if the gremlin made it stop working, then I didn't do the rituals of protection right.
Yeah, or it's a really powerful gremlin.
It could be a powerful gremlin.
This is the demonic possession of freaking rhinos. It's just, there's a gremlin in it.
Gremlins alone are this weird thing in military history. They really got popularized in World War I.
Wait, this is an actual thing?
This is an actual thing.
Oh my god.
Gremlins are an
I
actual
can't.
superstition that a lot of mechanic crews have. And it's also just their throwaway explanation for, like, something's broken, I don't know what it is yet. They'll just be like, gremlin got into it. It just kind of started because, like, mechanics weren't a real, like, fully fleshed out profession in military service yet. Like, automobiles were still very new by the time World War I rolled around, and then you had aircraft being used as well. And the idea of just like a mechanic who nobody understands his job is like, all right, so what's wrong with it today? And he's sitting there, it's like, you know what? Gremlin. What's a gremlin? Oh, it's a tiny little creature. It gets in and it unscrews bolts and it undoes wires and it's havoc. It's utter havoc. Oh, what do we do to, like, get rid of them? We leave out offerings of brandy and cigarettes, like, in the maintenance shack. This just kind of turned into, like, every unit has their own weird traditions. I know that
I can't get over this is a real thing.
In my
I don't know if you're messing with me.
No, I'm not messing with you at all. I was with the 1st of the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment up in J Bear, Alaska, Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in the Anchorage area. Our maintenance units, their call sign is Centurion. They are the Brigade Sustainment Battalion. So it's a group of people who all they do is like maintenance work and clerical work, and like that's their job. And they loan like companies out to all the other fighting battalions, and they do all of our maintenance stuff. And ours was Golf Company was the last one. Yeah, they changed the name to Golf Company before I left. And I knew a motor pool staff sergeant who had a tradition of always having like an extra cup of coffee on Motor Pool Monday, and he would just leave it in his office. It wasn't for anybody, but he just had this superstition that if he didn't do that, something terrible was going to happen, like an engine was going to fall out, like while someone was working on a vehicle, or they were going to undo the like oil pan to change the oil out, and they were going to see transmission fluid come dumping out, or they'd find like small animals in the air intakes. It was just like, they're crazy superstitions. But soldiers are ultimately human. So crazy superstitions are the order of the day. Everybody has a weird thing or ritual they do. And Gremlins just was one of those things that kind of like caught on real hard. And just became this kind of part of like popular culture. You even see Gremlins getting referenced in Disney cartoons in the 20s and 30s.
Like, there's always that one thing of the gremlin ripping apart the wing on an airplane.
Yes. Yeah. And, like, that's just... Yeah. Welcome to the real world. Fiction is sometimes a little more sensical, because you have to be able to believe the fiction. Real world doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be.
So the most realistic thing about this thing so far, aside from its longevity, is Gremlins.
It's Gremlins, yeah. Just the idea that someone's saying there, it's like... So I'm just going to, like... carve this little rune into here, Oh, what? Why? Why would you do that, brother? Gremlins. Ah, yes, brother, gremlins. We should put that on everything.
I'm just imagining two, like, atheist space marines talking to each other, and one just mentions gremlins. Like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're real things.
Deathly serious, brother. A gremlin got into my bolter in the last battle. Lost my arm because of it. It's like, yeah, gremlins. If you don't have an explanation, and I challenge everyone watching the video to try this, blame it on gremlins.
Somebody's bound to believe it.
Like, they're not even bound to believe it, but they're not going to ask for an in-depth explanation.
That's fair.
All right.
So, an hour in, and we got past this 2 pages.
It's a lot of lore.
All right.
So much. All right.
So, we get to see a Rhino with extra armor, which I really like.
Yeah.
We get to see the Rhino. This is the... oh god, I have no idea what mark this is. This is, known pattern.
Yeah, it's just the Mars pattern Rhino.
Okay.
Oh, wait, it's a Mark IIc.
Okay, so why doesn't it say that over here? Anyway. So we got the Mark II, and all of these are actually Mark II, which is convenient because I actually did bring a Mark II with me.
Woo!
I did not bring my Phobos.
I did not
the
bring my
Phobos.
Mark 1. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
unfortunately, I don't have that one with me. There's one with a dozer blade. That's kind of cool that it's there.
Yeah.
They
What?
can't take those anymore, but it's still cool.
Yeah, it's just a cool little piece of kit.
Yeah. I always love the plows on the front of Rhinos. It doesn't make any sense, but it's still really cool.
You'd be surprised how often, like, people would want some sort of dozer blade on the front of just a random vehicle in a company.
I'm still surprised they don't have the swinging chain thingy.
Oh,
Clear minefields.
Yeah, the minesweeper. It's the most 40k thing in existence, and it's real. And that one actually does go on the front of heavily armored tractors.
And
so,
it's not there.
Give it time. One day. One day.
It's a shame,
I'll build a defiler with one on it, and that will be its flails, okay?
I guess. But it's not the same.
No, it's not.
I want a Rhino that just whips the crap out of orcs, and then the orcs to take that idea and just weaponize it as a giant flail.
You know, I do have a Def Roller that I need to build, so...
Yeah, there we go. The closest thing is the orcs again.
Yeah.
Gotta love the orcs. Alright, so going into this thing, we have the Mars-patterned Rhino, the armored personnel carrier. This thing weighs 30 tons. Its length is 6.6 meters, or 21.6 feet. The width of this vehicle is 4.5 meters, or 14 to just about 15 feet.
Yep.
The height of this vehicle is 3.6, which is almost 12 feet.
Yep.
By comparison to the Chimera being 22 feet across, in length, I mean.
Yep.
So the Chimera is longer. The width of the Chimera is bigger at 18.7 feet, or 5.7 meters, and the height is 3.72 meters, which is 12.2 feet. The Rhino is smaller.
Yep. But I think that's fine. So
Like we talked about in the Chimera video, the actual size is fine.
yeah, you don't want to be super big, especially if you're an armored personnel carrier. Now, I did do some research on the modern day equivalent, and for those of you playing at home, you're going to want to look up the M113 armored personnel carrier. This thing was designed in the 1960s. It is still used today. The U.S. military tried to replace it in 2018, and everyone kind of realized, wow, there's nothing that we could build today that really does everything we need this to do without it costing billions of dollars. Yeah. So they just decided to keep them because they run forever. They were built in the 60s, so they've got very few like high-tech parts in them unless they're aftermarket editions. And there's millions. Oh, that's hyperbole. There's dozens of different variants, from ones that have an opened hatch in the back for firing a mortar out of. There's ambulance variants. There's a command and control variant. There is one that was designed with a flamethrower on top for use in like jungle warfare. Like just throw anything on it. The M113 will make it work. However, comma, the M113 weighs about 12 tons.
Yeah, this thing has a bit of a chunk on it.
It has a bit of a chunk on it. The big reason the M113...
This tank is thick.
Yeah, he's thick with 3 C's. Thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. So the big reason the M113 weighs so little is it actually had aluminum armor on it because they wanted it to be portable by aircraft and by landing vehicles and whatnot. So they...
And we know this is transportable by aircraft thanks to the Thunderhawk transport.
Yep, because, 40K supersized technology.
Yep.
But yeah, it would only really defend the people inside against small arms fire, so that's man-portable weapons, not heavy machine guns or anything like that.
Which is the same with the Rhino.
Same with the Rhino. And you see that in the old versions of the game as well, where something like a bolter can't hurt a Rhino in the old editions, where armor values were a thing.
I know, it could glance.
Rear
armor 10.
Rear armor 10. Okay, yeah, if you got behind it, yes, you could. But like the truly small arms fire of the lasgun just didn't.
Yeah, just pinged off of it.
Couldn't do anything. So you were very safe from that. But anything of any actual consequence would just punch right through a Rhino.
Yep. Anything from cannon upwards.
Yeah.
Even multi-laser would punch through it.
Yeah, multi-laser could pen on a 6. Yeah, Rhinos were real good because infantry had trouble with them. And that's mainly the reason that armored personnel carriers are good, is infantry have trouble dealing with them. Mm-hmm. So as far as dimensions go, length 4.863 meters. So
the Rhino's longer.
Rhino's longer, about 6 feet longer. Width 2.6 meters.
So again, 2 meters longer.
Which again, about 6 feet, and then 2.5 meters in height.
Okay, so they have comparable height at 3.6. So this thing is 3 feet taller.
3 feet taller, yeah. It still has the same crew complement of 2. Like there's a driver and there's a commander.
This one only has a crew of 1.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the Rhinos only canonically have the 1. There is nobody telling the Space Marine where to go.
Yep, there's strictly that Space Marine in all of them. Even the Arbites have the Space Marine. Space Marine doesn't get out of the Rhino, though.
Yeah. So the M113... So remember, this thing was built in the 60s, still in use today, used by 50 some odd countries, and
That's 60 years in service.
Yeah, about 60 years in service, and they've made about 80,000 of them at last estimates across the whole world, right? And it carries 11 people in the back.
Oh, so it's better than this.
By one human.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not as heavily armored. They eventually added ways to bolt on extra armor, so spaced armor like we see over here, which is really useful against rocket-propelled grenades and like very small caliber anti-tank munitions, essentially.
So like a heavy bolter in this case.
Yeah, essentially just things that do most of their damage by penetrating through one layer of armor and then detonating. That's what spaced armor is really good against.
So against a heavy bolter.
Against a heavy bolter,
or
standard bolters would just be fine. Yeah, but yeah, the M113 it's smaller. They go about the same speed, surprisingly. So because it's 70 kilometers an hour for you.
70 kilometers or about 44 miles per hour.
Yeah, which is about as fast as you can get in M113. There's you can, depending on the terrain, go about that fast off-road. But that's in an open field with nothing in the way.
Yeah, I assume when they say on-road, it doesn't factor in fields. This thing can take off in fields.
Yeah.
But in dense terrain, this thing is going 55 kph or 34 miles per hour, which puts it at the exact same speed as the Chimera.
Yeah. So there you go. Can zip up in front of everything else, deposit troops onto objectives.
And again, unlike the Chimera, which the Chimera is an infantry fighting vehicle, this thing is not that.
This thing is not that. An APC's role in combat is to deposit troops in positions where they can support armored assaults. After World War I, when tanks really started becoming a thing in 1918, people kind of lost interest in the idea of making an armored personnel carrier, because one of the lessons learned in places like the Battle of the Somme was that tanks, while very powerful, need infantry to support them.
Yep.
The crew of the tank are not getting out with their carbines, pistols, and submachine guns and seizing objectives. And a tank is a very big target when you can get close to it with explosives. And, we see that in 40k tactics. How do you take out a lot of tanks that are just, like, running around with no infantry support? You get into melee with them.
Mm-hmm. Which, as weird as it is, that is a tactic that could be used today. Just run and gun it.
Yeah, just get up close to it, get underneath the range of its big gun, get into its blind spots, because there's a lot of them. And, yeah.
And when they conveniently put ladders on the side of them.
Yeah, I would not climb up one of those ladders, and we'll get to why here in a second.
I mean, they could just drop the door.
Exactly. That is a couple 100 pounds that's going to get flopped onto you.
Yeah.
I have actually...
But you know that there's crazed cultists that would do that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. People will do it. I mean, I've seen people...
You can actually see the ladder on the side of this one.
I've actually seen people get, there are, armored plates caught by a falling door because they just weren't paying attention. And, these plates are made of Kevlar. They are actually very, very tough, very hard to break, and this thing just pulps them. I've thankfully never had to see a person get caught under the door, but I have heard horror stories of when that happens.
Yeah.
Because these doors are essentially just slabs of armor. There will be nothing worth hitting inside one of these doors.
And we know that the Space Marine door, or the Rhino's door, is actually 2 doors. Because there's an internal door as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it is slotted armor. So if one thing penetrates this door, it'll explode, and there's still a door behind it that you can see on this Predator. Well, I hope you can see it. The lighting is not perfect, but it's the best place without a glare. But there are extra doors behind these things as well. And also, I can do this.
You got the lights?
Yeah, I do have lights on this thing.
Beep, beep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, if a round is going to detonate, you want it to blow up outside of the crew compartment. Because your whole purpose is to deposit crew that can then support armored assaults. That's all it's there for. And that's what you saw this used for edition after edition after edition. Was
Even in modern edition, it's still used for the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not seen as heavy because no one's taking baby Marines without...
Yeah.
Like, if you're taking baby Marines, you're taking Vanguard veterans, you're taking bikers, you're
Yeah.
taking Devastators that don't need these.
Yep, you're taking things that don't benefit from having these. Like, when your options were, my troops are tactical Marines and some scout troopers, you took a few tactical Marines just to do the Rhino rush of, the Rhino goes up, deposits the tactical Marines onto an objective, and then it just supports them. It doesn't really go off and fight on its own after that.
No,
And that's kind of the whole thing with an armored personnel carrier. Like, it's not going to carry any sort of heavy ordnance to fight. It's just there to drop troops off.
And now we do know that these things can be used as command tanks.
Yep.
Personally, I wouldn't use one of these as a command tank, but it can be used.
Yeah.
So, let's get into the next few pages where we actually get to see the Rhino in all of its glory.
Yeah.
And what do you think about the giant sided edges? The really easy to hit sides.
So the M113 is pretty much exclusively flat. And the reason that it is flat is it's a production consideration. Flat surfaces are really easy to manufacture, especially in mass. I believe it referenced that some of these armor plates are cast. So they're poured into a mold, which is a very fast and easy way to produce armor plating. And because it's fast and easy, it also means it would therefore be cheap in terms of time, resources, and manpower. So you don't care too much about it. Again, these things are never taking a direct hit from an anti-tank gun. And if they are, something terrible has happened.
Yeah, they got flanked or they're going to die regardless.
Yeah.
But against, the front armor itself, they have a pretty,
Yeah, they've got angled cross-sections and everything like that you want to see.
Yeah.
Because ideally this thing would be driving towards the enemy, and then when it's stopping... the M113 only had a rear access hatch.
This one having 4.
This one having 4 access hatches, different ways to disembark troops, means that the direction of fire...
Oops, sorry.
So it could drive up onto an objective and sit here, and everyone gets out behind it and takes cover behind the vehicle until they figure out what their plan is. Say this is just a big machine gun over here firing.
Pew,
at
pew,
it.
pew.
Pew, 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 pew. If you deploy an angle, people can use the rear hatch, people can use one of the side hatches, and you have a wider area for people to deploy into. And because of how penetrating armor works, the more angle that you have against an enemy that's firing on you, the more armor they actually have to go through to hit. It's essentially, if I'm firing at this flat piece of paper, I have very little to get through.
Mm-hmm.
If we change the angle to where it's more oblique, I actually have more material I'd have to punch through before I'm through to the other side. This is actually probably an easier way to show it on camera. So, flat on, very little space. But the more you turn it, suddenly I'm going through a lot more material.
Yep.
And yeah, so having flat armor siding on these things, because they're just personnel carriers, it's not the end of the world. They're not meant to be taking direct hits. It's going to be a problem when we get to things like the Predator.
Yeah.
Because that thing is going to draw fire.
This thing is dusty.
It's almost like you haven't played Marines in a while, Alexis.
I haven't played my baby Marines in a while. Yeah, this thing is just all dust. But anyway.
But yeah, like, wide, flat armor paneling, yeah, it's not great as a tactical consideration. However, logistics, manufacturing, this thing's origins, it makes sense why you would do it. And again, you can throw spaced armor on there. And once you start adding spaced armor, reactive armor, you don't need to be able to stop around in one go if you can just bolt extra armor onto the sides.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And we do know that these vehicles can haul that.
Yep, they've got no problem chugging it around.
So then we have the Dark Angel one here. The Exorcists, which is a really cool chapter. I love these guys. They all get possessed, by the way. And then...
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Also, this is an apothecary tank. This is a medic vehicle.
Yep.
So you can now see their multi-purpose and everything. Some rhinos that belong to Masters of the Forge and Tech Marines will actually have all the servo harnesses and everything inside and all the raw materials for them to rebuild the tank.
Yeah, again, if you build a good enough chassis, you can adapt it to any situation. And that's kind of the rhino's whole purpose, is just to be adaptable.
Yep. These sigils indicate what's inside, which personally I would not want to show my opponent. No. It's not like a chapter sigil or something like that.
No,
that
yeah.
literally tells you what's inside it.
Yeah, so there is a consideration to be made in that you kind of want a easy to see icon that shows what is in what vehicle. And in the U.S. military, we actually have a numbering system.
Yeah, numbers are fine. Like basic infantry can't learn.
It's called a bumper number. And the bumper number will tell you what unit a vehicle is from, where within that unit the vehicle is, and if it has a special designator, what it is. So if I needed to find, like, Delaware was our heavy weapons company. So the D company.
D.
D. So if you looked at any of our vehicles, they would say D and then two numbers. Stop it. So anyways,
First thing I thought of.
So it would be D11 all the way to D44.
All the way to D's.
All the D's.
Anyway.
And you'd be able to, like, okay, I need to find 1st Platoon, Delaware Company, and their, like, platoon leader. Okay, I know the platoon leader is in the 2nd vehicle, so I'm looking for Delaware 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So it makes it easy to identify where people are, especially in the, like, heat of battle. You don't want to be running up to a Humvee and trying to, like, open a door, because those doors lock.
Yeah.
And you will just, like, tear your arm out of its, like, a socket if you, like, if you run up and try to grab the wrong door in the heat of the moment.
Jeez.
But, yeah.
So here we see all of the interiors of this thing. We also get to see the interior door.
Yes.
Which I was trying to show you with the Predator, but now we actually get to see it. So now we know that the armor is multi-part.
Yep.
So Which is cool. You can actually see that when you're building this thing, too.
Yeah, you have the option to just not put that exterior door on. I've seen people who actually model the Rhino so that those exterior doors can fall down.
Yep.
So it's a lot of extra effort, but it's a cool little detail.
Yeah. So we get to see how the people position themselves within the Rhino itself. It honestly looks like the Space Marines stand. I assume there are benches inside it. We know that.
Yeah,
So I assume there's a middle row of benches that they just couldn't put in the model.
You can also just have a lot of military large transport aircraft have essentially canvas seats. So they're just like two pipes and a bit of fabric in between, and it just folds down out of the wall when you need to sit down.
Okay.
And when you're done, you stand up and you tuck it away. It makes it very easy to not have to worry about space and issues like that. So it's entirely possible that's the situation, or they are Space Marines. They probably are also just standing there. For all we know, there's like a handrail that goes across here that they can hold on to as well. We know Space Marine armor, certain marks have maglock boots, so they could just buckle themselves down, lock their armor in place, and then not have to worry about getting thrown around.
Yep, they can also just go into stasis while they wait.
Yeah,
That's
just
a thing
chill.
that Space Marines can do. Sisters, on the other hand, they probably need the seating and everything.
Yeah.
Arbites.
But they also take up a lot less space.
Yep.
So that you'd probably, again, see one of those modifications. With the side doors, you'd probably just have a row of seats in the middle rather than seats
Yeah.
on the side.
Well, we know from the interior of the Rhino, which I can't show because my back doors are sealed. Make jokes of that as you will.
Giggity.
God damn it. Actually, wait, I can show you because the top isn't glued down.
See, there we go. Yep.
You can actually see the interior where there are benches on the sides. There's also, this one doesn't have the panel at the front, mostly because I needed room. Well, the person who painted this, which was Rockstar Sanguinius, needed room for the interior, the batteries and everything. I took the batteries out of these things when I keep them in storage because I don't want them bursting into flames.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I kept this one because it was on. It was getting ready for a video, and then I never filmed it because I was trying to fix all my Space Marines.
Space Marines.
Yeah,
It's been over an hour and we have not made one metal boxes joke.
I know, right?
Wow, our self-restraint.
Metal box.
There we
Anyway.
go. All right, now that that's out of your system.
So, what do you think about how they deploy? Personally, I think this is idiotic.
So, jumping out and then one squad goes one way, one squad goes the other way. There is...
I mean, there's tactics to that, but when this is like...
Yeah, if you're facing fire from head on, like this is just more of a conceptual thing at that point. I do like that there's a whole section down here that we're not going to go into and read the whole way through, just because the way they describe it is a little clumsy. But essentially how it breaks down is Squad 1, so Demi Squad 1, and Demi Squad 2 are two different elements.
Demi boys.
Demis. So they're really attracted to people emotionally, okay?
Yes.
So Demi Squad 1 will be the assault element, and Demi Squad 2 will be the cover fire element. So when Demi Squad 2 comes out, they're going to move over to a location where they can set up a nice field of fire and
So that would be
suppress the
the
enemy.
heavy weapon would go there.
Yeah, the heavier of the weapons that they have would go in there, and Demi Squad 1, you'd probably have like a grenadier inside this element. The platoon leader would stay with Demi Squad 2, the platoon sergeant would probably go with Demi Squad 1, or the squad leader, squad sergeant. In the U.S. Army, you have one officer and one high-ranking non-commissioned officer per platoon. So each squad usually has a staff sergeant and then a sergeant underneath him to run the individual squads themselves.
Yeah, but for ease, GW got rid of that.
Yeah, for ease of reference, because who wants to worry about rank structures?
Even though in the Space Marine game, they quite literally go through it.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to make excuses.
I know, but tabletop game is to represent the game itself, not the lore.
Yep. But yeah, so pretty much, like, while Demi Squad 2 fixes and fires on the enemy location, Demi Squad 1 can move into position and then assault through the objective, call for a ceasefire on Demi Squad 2, and then take the objective. Like, that is a very basic, like, task and drill. It's super easy to do, and honestly, having the flexibility to get out onto opposite sides, like, because of the height of this vehicle, you would probably want to deploy it somewhere where a berm is about the height of the vehicle. So something like that.
Boop.
Boop. And then everyone can get out, stay behind the piece of terrain. Demi Squad 2 moves up onto the berm, fires down on the enemy position, while Demi Squad 1 has the fun task of walking for a long time before assaulting through the objective.
Yep.
And you always assault through an objective. Someone pointed out to me the other day that I didn't really explain what that meant. When you have an objective, so we will say that this is your objective.
Here, get the key paper.
Objective. So just O, B, J. So there's a big old objective here. We have one element of the squad, so we'll use little boxes. So this will be the Demi Squad 2, so this is the cover fire element. They are firing onto the objective. And then all the way on the outside of the fire of the little impact zone will be Squad 1, or Demi Squad 1. When Demi Squad 1 is ready to move onto the objective, they will call for what is called a shift fire. Everyone firing back here will just turn so that their LOA, limit of advance, is past the objective. And this will allow Demi Squad 1 to move up onto the objective, and then you assault through the objective. So you actually completely cross through the objective, checking bodies, engaging contacts, securing any sort of details of information. Because if you stop when you get to the center of the objective, you have a whole half of the objective that is not secure. There is a good chance that there's someone alive in this area. There is a chance that vital intelligence is in this side of the area, or that there's a booby trap in this side of the area that has a explosive radius that could harm you on the other side. You always take the complete objective. In Warhammer 40k, you can apply this in your games, and it will help your win ratio. Because a lot of people will just sit and center on top of the objective.
Mm-hmm.
And then your opponent gets to contest the objective because they get within range of it.
Yep.
So always set up to where you control the objective, because at the end of the day, you want all of your men in positions where they can defend the objective if there's a counter assault.
Yep.
So yeah. So always have your guys within an inch of the objective's radius, but keep the enemies off of that inch. So there you go.
Big brain plays.
Big brain plays.
All right, so let's take a look at the Rhino itself. We know that its track goes all the way around it, but unlike other vehicles, since we know that this is segregated armor, we know that they can actually pop the top off of it.
Yep.
And repair the tracks if needed, which is a really good feature.
Yeah, it's going to be very handy if track gets damaged, because the big downside to having a covered track is there's potential for a tread to get snarled up inside the mechanism.
Up in here.
Yeah, up in here. If you're able to just get into that and take that snarled piece of metal out, it lets you rerun the track much more smoothly. It's a lot less headache. It really speeds up your process of getting the vehicle back into the fight. So,
and we do know that the Rhino itself, which is not mentioned in this, can self-repair.
Yes. Yeah, that was a thing for so long while you took rhinos, was because they could just fix themselves.
Like, they get immobilized, they could just fix themselves.
Yep, well, Chimera just was real sad.
Chimera, sad boy.
Chimera was super sad boy.
So, we actually get to see a lot of the interior designs here, where the driver sits, where the cupola is, right down to where the air intakes are.
Yeah.
And the environmental protections are, and all the batteries and everything, and where they're all kept.
Yeah.
It's, and it also has, what's that, 22?
Storage.
It's more storage.
It's where you hide all your Space Marine MREs.
I mean, they do have MREs.
I know. I like to think sometimes what a Space Marine's favorite MRE is.
Probably meatballs.
Oh, the meatballs are so bad, though. Chili Mac.
Chili Mac is good.
Chili Mac in the comments.
By the way, I do know what MREs taste like and everything. I've had them before. They're It's pretty bad.
They're pretty awful, but man, are they calorically dense.
Yeah.
You can run a long time off an MRE. But yeah, so other cool thing here. So we've got the internal cross-section. If you're ever wondering what's underneath all the armor right here, this is that image. Mm-hmm. So it shows you how all the powering is, like the power cables run under the door, where the motors are that actually run everything, where the air intakes are. Yeah, it's just a really well thought out kind of fun design. I do like that they. So there was an issue with the original M113. The fuel was kept inside the compartment with the troops.
Okay, that seems safe.
This is, historically, it's a bad idea to put people next to things that explode. Citation needed on that one.
Galaxy is big. Citation needed.
Yeah. So eventually, they did move the fuel tanks into a separate compartment, and that was the M113 version A2, I want to say. And the fact that you have the engines on the outside of the crew compartment means that you have more space on the inside for crew, for equipment, for supplies.
And it even has a fire extinguisher. Sorry, I think that's actually kind of cool.
Hey, in the grim dark of the 41st millennium,
this thing has a lot of safety features.
It has a fire extinguisher and a med kit in the driver's compartment.
Is that good? No, right?
That's great. That's amazing. That's so good. Because if something goes wrong in the rear, they can get out easy. The driver has to come through a hatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got to sit there and he's got to fight a fire if one starts in the control console. He's got to be able to patch himself or the gunner up if something happens.
There is no gunner.
There could be a gunner, pintle mounted.
Yeah, that's true. One of the guys inside can get out and fire it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cool little details like that make these ones real fun.
Let's see.
Is there any other weird one? Let's see. We've got
storm bolters, vision blocks, suspension system.
Ooh, okay, they've got
we actually get to see the full suspension of this vehicle.
Yeah.
Which we can see is actually fairly high.
Yeah, they've got it kind of everywhere too. So that's good. They didn't miss out on a small detail like that as well. Mm-hmm. I do think that this is really cool, though. So number 5, control console, tactical display, and engine status display.
Yeah, that sounds useful.
Yeah, that's super useful. It's a small little detail like that. Even we've got the narrow band long range communications array, so your antenna essentially next to the comlink unit. I would be willing to throw a little bit of money into a bet that they did take an M113's design schematics, because those are available in the public forum, and they just copied it down and just adjusted some lines and everything.
Are you telling me that Games Workshop copies things?
I'm telling you that they were inspired by something.
Ah, okay. So the Tyranids definitely aren't just the aliens.
No, legally distinct.
Yeah. And the Tyranids are definitely not the bug menace.
No, legally distinct.
Okay.
All right. Now, the granddaddy.
This thing is cute as hell.
Lots of new players will have never seen the Mark 1s, and they never will.
It's adorable.
It's adorable.
It's small. It's light as hell.
Mine does not leave my house.
I'm actually selling 2 of them.
I am so paranoid about something happening to it if I ever actually brought it out for a game that I don't know if I could handle it. It's one of the first models I ever owned. It's easily 20-something years old. But yeah, they were super small, super tiny. It feels like plastic card that you'd get from Walmart when you pick one up. And they are noticeably smaller than modern day rhinos. They are so abnormally adorable.
Just to give you a reference to how small it is, a Primaris Marine stands bigger than it.
Yeah,
all right, let's read through some of this.
A Dreadnought's base is wider than it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can hide this thing completely behind a new Rhino.
I did do that once at a tournament to be real scummy.
Yeah, I've done it before.
Because it's a legal model and no one could say anything about it. And it's just like, you know what, I'll never do this again, but this feels bad.
Yeah, you can literally hide it in the silhouette of the Rhino right behind it.
Yep. Yep, it is narrower, shorter, like, in
More
all
durabler.
respects. Yep, but the exact same profile. Hell yeah.
Same armor and everything.
Oh, man. And they all used to come with these rams, too.
Yeah, I still have a couple of those rams.
Yeah. All right, so the Rhino Mark 1B is the oldest surviving mark and pattern of Rhino armored personnel carrier still in service with Imperial forces. Once, the Mark 1B was produced in vast numbers. So many Space Marine chapters, Adeptus Arbites precincts, or Inquisitorial fortresses have surviving examples of this once popular vehicle. Today, most chapters consider it to be an older pattern that has passed its best, but it is still honored and deserving of high respect for its long and successful service. No Mark 1Bs are constructed today. All Masters of the Forge look to the Mark 2C to fulfill their current battlefield needs. All the Rhino classes based vehicles also have their Mark 1B equivalents. So Whirlwinds, Vindicators,
Yeah, that's one of the tanks I forgot.
Razorbacks, and Predators have all seen service with this basic chassis, and some chapters still retain examples of these vehicles as well. The main difference between the marks is the construction of the vehicle's engine and drive system, which is far more robust in the Mark IIC, with a resulting slightly higher top speed and low bearing capacity. The Mark I lacks the built-in system redundancy, which makes the Rhino such a reliable vehicle, although the Mark I's more straightforward engine design has some benefits, such as in maintenance time should the machine spirit of the vehicle fail or become corrupted. How many Mark I's still exist is unknown, but given the huge numbers that were once produced, it is likely that Mark I's will continue to serve Imperial forces in ever-diminishing numbers for some years yet.
Okay, so basically what they said is, it's adorable. Look at how cute it is.
Yeah.
Also, I like that they have a Death Guard one.
Yeah, the old classic ones. And when Forge World started making
I
the...
wish Imperial fists were this color. Just continue, sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I agree, though.
Yeah, yellow is stupid.
Nice khaki color. Anyways,
She sounds hideous.
the Demios pattern rhinos that Forge World started coming out with, they are based around this concept, like the circular doors, the weird slooping angles. Like, back when these things were first made, it was just really cool. It was back in the days where, like, the Ork war buggy was brand new.
I actually don't think GW produced these at the time.
The first ones
toy
were...
company.
Yeah, the first ones were somebody else. Oh, what was it?
Yeah, because it wasn't any of the companies that became Games Workshop, like
Yeah.
ArmorCast, which technically is its own company today, but
Yeah.
did have a partnership
time.
with Games Workshop. It wasn't Forge World of North America, which became Forge World, which
World,
is
yeah.
weird. It wasn't Forge World, which isn't the Forge World of today.
Yep.
And there's several other companies that Games Workshop used to work with that produce these things for them.
Yeah, because back in the day, you could only really specialize in making, like, one type of model. And so for a long time, Games Workshop saw itself as just a rules company, not a model company. You had to get the models from a million other places.
Yep. And they even had rules for other games.
Yeah, they did. Like, other systems. It's like...
Like Judge Dredd.
It was the Wild West. Like,
Yeah.
companies were just making stuff.
And then GW started making metal miniatures, and that's where they started.
Yep, the first
Going.
computers and whatnot, yeah. The old head-on, everyone's arms are out to their sides models.
Yep.
Yep.
So, really cute. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
So, here's its stats, and the stats are still the same to this day if you play 30k.
Yep.
Our front armor
I think
11s.
slightly cheaper now. Aren't they like 35 points each or something in 30k?
In 30k, yes. In 40k, they're 70.
No, see, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's why you will
they've
never see
been
this.
they've never been expensive.
Well, 70 points is expensive.
It could be worse.
Yeah.
But yeah. Open top transport, that was a whole thing you had to worry about. This thing had an access port, so you could just fire the heavy gun out the top.
Yep. So, before we move on, we have to rate the Rhino.
Rate the Rhino. Ugh.
Does it pass?
Yeah, there's a modern equivalent that we still actively use. We're actually having a really hard time replacing it in the modern military. The design features are essentially copy-pasted from the M113, and yeah, if you've never seen an M113, I highly encourage people go take a look once the video's over, but you'll see that there's more than a passing resemblance to this thing, and that usually raises some red flags for people. But I think it's fine. It's bigger, it's faster, it's got a really cool engine system that I think could be really interesting. As an armored personnel carrier, the Rhino gets a pass.
And now we're going to get into the problematic
Now we're going to get to the
portion of it.
fail, yes.
All right. So, moving on to the Predator Destructor. Now, the difference between the Predator Annihilator, which is the twin las cannon, the Predator Destructor, main difference is that it has the autocannon, the Predator autocannon to be precise, which is a larger caliber autocannon than the typical autocannons used in 40K. This one also has a model of a hunter-killer missile, because I actually like hunter-killer missiles. Typically, the Destructor has the heavy bolter side sponsons. You don't have to do those. You can have the Destructor with the las cannons options. The Predator Annihilator is strictly
All las cannons.
the
all
las
day.
cannons, and it could have the heavy bolters as well. So the main difference is the big gun on top.
I think this is a good time to point out to the newer fans of 40K that back in ye olden days, where your guns were on the model super mattered.
Yep.
Because the gun had to physically be able to see the target, right?
Yep. And since these guns can only pivot a certain amount, I'm not going to try to pivot these ones because they are glued in place.
Yeah.
They can pivot a certain amount. Can I use your pencil real quick as a demonstration? They have a firing arc that isn't that great. You have to be several inches in front of this thing. In fact, I believe the math for it was 8 inches in front of it, which is
Yep.
why flamethrowers were 8 inches back in the day.
Yep,
Just
and
a
if-
little design note.
And if you could find some way to fire at somebody that you had to overwatch, well, there's a chance that your side guns would not get to fire if you had that ability. So yeah, lots of little weirdness just right out the gate on this thing.
So let's read what this thing is.
All right, so it is a variant of the basic Rhino chassis, equipped with
Okay, sorry about that.
All right.
But getting back to it.
Let's see, where were we? Superior armor protection and firepower. In favor of the troop transportation capacity, it provides heavy fire support to Space Marine squads in battle. Back in the dark age of technology, all Predators were of the Destructor variant.
Which is the autocannon.
Yep, armed with an autocannon. In a turret, the Predator Destructor, as it was later to become known, has served mankind since the dawn of the Imperium.
Dum dum dum.
So if you're playing 30K, you have to take autocannons. Sorry, I don't make the rules.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yep.
Even though we know that that's not true. That got retconned because GW loves selling models.
Yep.
And a lot of their lore is strictly to limit themselves so that they don't have to make a lot of stuff.
Yes. Generally, a Space Marine chapter will maintain between 20 and 30 Predators of all types.
Ooh, that's a good note to keep.
Yep. The Master of the Forge is responsible for these vehicles and, on request, will issue those Predators he feels are suitable, based on the mission brief, to a task force commander. The Master of the Forge considers each vehicle his own charge, and each must be treated with respect whilst on campaign. It must be kept properly maintained and all rights observed. Yeah, if you go to a mission brief, which they're a really weird experience the first time you go, but after a minute you realize it's like, wow, this could have been in an email, but I'm really glad we walked through it. In a mission brief, you will have each individual person stand up and they will walk into the middle of usually a giant representation of the battlefield with markings for where units will be, where terrain features are, where...
By the way, that's what you play in Warhammer 40K when you play on the tabletop.
Yes, you are playing a simulation, as Perturabo wanted it.
Yep.
Never forget, the Iron Warriors brought you 40K.
Yep.
So you like go through the whole process of the mission on this sand table, and everybody brings up issues with the plan. It's like, hey, if you're all the way over here, how will I get supporting fire? If you're over there, what do I do with my casualties if I take any? And you just walk through the whole process. So a Master of a Forge, hearing the plan for the mission, hearing like weather reports, auspex scans of the region, enemy forces on the ground.
Hell, even the geology of the planet.
Yeah, he could make those decisions of like, okay, we're going up against Tyranids, and there's no sign of larger, like, high fleet forms. Okay, autocannons and, like, heavy bolters, let's go. You know? Like,
try to keep the fighting out of the foliage,
yeah,
so they have no cover.
Yeah, there's all sorts of tactical considerations you can make, and a lot of commanders will defer to the expertise of their subordinates, that's the word. Because if you are a military commander, congrats, you got there, you did hard work, but you don't know everything.
Good job.
Because if you do know everything, you're going to be put in a job where you are not at risk ever. You are going to be teaching, or you're going to be in a higher echelon of command and thus out of combat. Knowing everything is its own special curse in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of commanders will spend as much time as they can delegating so that they don't come off as someone who knows absolutely everything. Saying I don't know is not a bad thing in the military. Saying I don't know and then not following it up with, hey, but I will find out and I will let you know as soon as I do. That's the taboo. You always are willing to go find the information or find the person who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
You're like, yes, Space Marines are like more than human.
But they're still human.
They're still human. There's still a core component to them that is allowed to be unsure and want to double check.
Also, I just noticed something with this tank convoy that's going.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dreadnought at the back,
Yep.
which means they're only going 6 miles per hour.
They are plodding along.
Oh my god. I would be so pissed.
I would just hop onto the back and hold on.
Just hang on.
Yeah.
What if we destroy one of the rhinos? I'll take care of it. It's not a problem. Just get in the damn rhino.
Wrap some chains around it, throw down a sled, and go.
I would have the dreadnought just tear this part open and just climb it.
Oh, man.
Especially when Marines can move at 55 miles per hour.
Yeah. Anyways, alright, service record. The Predator first saw service during the Dark Age of technology, when it was a standard battle tank of all mankind's fighting forces. It was first built as a response to a newly encountered threat from a violent and warlike alien race, the Orks. Barbarous savages who lived only for war and battle. Mankind's forces were having great difficulty in combating the Orks' reckless head-on charges. Seeking new tactics and new weapons to defeat the Orks, the Predator came into being. With extra armor and heavy weapons, a Predator could resist attacks from most Ork weapons. And the Savage's primitive armor was no match for the autocannon and heavy bolters.
That's fair.
It is a design that has withstood the test of time well. The first Predators were constructed with a small troop carrying capacity, but during the campaigns of the Great Crusade, this capacity was gradually lost in favor of more ammunition stowage space, especially if the Predator was mounted with sponsons, which became the standard during the Great Crusade. Yeah. Thank an Orc player. He brought you your Predator. Without it, you wouldn't have it.
You's welcome, you gits.
You's all welcome. Alright. And now walking right along.
In all fairness, the Orcs also wanted the Imperium to get them so that they can get them.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like having a looted wagon that's built on a Rhino? Like, it is...
Yeah, it's fun.
It is why you play Orcs, is you want to build weird stuff. Alright, the Predator's armor is constructed of 3 main layers. Count them. 3. The inner layer provides the main protection. It's a bonded ceramite adamantium alloy, which provides protection equal to over 5 times the same width of conventional steel, whilst being lighter.
Hey, we now know how thick that adamantium is. It's 5 times the strength of steel.
Man, I could probably figure it out. But moving on. The second layer is a reinforcing thermoplast with a subdermal energy dissipation fiber mesh, providing protection against extremes of heat and radioactivity. The outer layer is a non-magnetic acrylic identification sheath In all, this corresponds to over 200 millimeters of conventional steel on the front of the vehicle.
200 of conventional steel.
Of conventional steel.
Hey, so
So all three together equals 200 millimeters of conventional steel.
so now we have that written down.
Yep, so we could figure out what modern day weapons could actually penetrate, like the front armor on a good hit. I just want to point out that this is all sci-fi gobbledygook. I feel like it just needs to be said.
The basis of it is that it can survive shots upwards of... It can't survive plasma level shots, but it can survive like flamethrowers and things like that.
So, non-magnetic acrylic identification sheath. If we just sit there and break it down. So non-magnetic, okay, there's no iron in it. Acrylic identification sheath. It's talking about the paint. Like, it could be just standard acrylic-based paints. Because it is not plastic. Acrylic's a fun word, especially back when they wrote this. Acrylic was still, like, fairly new.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that point, they're just talking about, like, oh yeah, no, the paint job.
That's really funny.
Yeah, and, you know, having, like, a layer of reinforcing thermoplas with subdermal energy dissipation fiber mesh. If you're going to protect the crew from heat, you put your hardest armor on the outside then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the layering is a little weird. Because the second layer sounds like some sort of insulator, so you'd probably want to put that underneath the nice big heavy armored layer.
But we do know it's a double layer of
Yeah,
armor.
They've got multiple sets of it. The sponsons have their own set
Now-
in addition.
I think that ups its armor to 13 in the front.
Yes,
So-
in the old times.
It does actually help against plasma-based weaponry, but not las cannons.
Yeah.
So we do know that heat from a las cannon can burn through it.
Yep. And they were what, 13, 12, 10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 13, 11, 10.
We'll find out in a minute.
Yeah.
So, on the common Mars pattern of the Mark IV-B Predator Destructor, the main turret weapon is a Syrtis pattern autocannon with automated ammunition feed, muzzle flash suppressor, and discharge extractor. The weapon is slaved to a multispectral remote targeting surveyor, an accuracy talisman, and controlled by the vehicle's commander, who is also the vehicle's gunner. Sponson weapons are remotely operated from the turret, controlled by a multispectral remote targeting surveyor, and protected by armored cowling. The mount allows a variety of weapons to be fitted, with heavy bolters commonly chosen for close defense, and las cannons for additional anti-armor firepower.
Now, to get into that, how the one Space Marine operates this entire vehicle is strictly based on thought. The vehicle itself plugs into him, and it actually plugs into his black carapace, which I think is really cool. On humans, there's a port at the back of their head, base of their spine, that spot right there, where a connection node will go into you, and it'll connect your mind to the machine itself. You can read about this in most of the Titan books, as well as a good chunk of the Knight books. And the machine spirit will fight you for control, and they have personalities and everything. It's mostly how you find out that the machine spirit is actually just a soul trapped within the machine. A human soul, more than likely.
A ghost in a shell.
Yeah, who would have guessed? But imagine if you were playing a video game without your hands, but your hands can still control, like, one thing, but subconsciously you were shooting at targets you were seeing.
Yeah.
That's how these things operate, and it's super efficient.
Yeah, you're talking about shaving off nano and milliseconds on reaction times, but in a combat situation, a nano and millisecond reaction times are the difference between you winning a fight and losing a fight. So anything that you can do to speed up any additional process, like aiming, maneuvering,
Now,
it's good.
Space Marines have a much higher reaction speed than a human. I think it's 5 times the reaction speed of a human.
Yeah.
Which means they can react to... I think they can almost react to the speed of sound. Like, that's how quick they are.
Yeah.
Because I know the average human can see something traveling at the speed of sound. They can actually react to it. Now, I may be wrong, and I do apologize if I am. And somebody please correct me if I am wrong.
Bring citations.
Yeah, citations needed. Universe is big. But yeah, Space Marine vehicles, they're typically really efficient for mechanics. Really terrible for design.
Yeah.
So let's continue.
Continuing on, construction. Because the Rhino is an extremely adaptable design, which features built-in compatibility with many standard weapons and drive systems, it is used as the basis of many Space Marine vehicles. It is easily converted into many standard and specialized variants, of which the Predator is amongst the most common. Predators are constructed in a chapter's forges, alongside Rhinos. The Tech Priests will earmark a set number of Rhino chassis to become Predators, Whirlwinds, and other variants. So they just assembly line them, make the base chassis, and then as they come off the line, all right, this one goes there, that one goes there. Like,
I'm just imagining he like holds the infant by like the leg, slaps its ass, and is just like Predator, and throws it into the Predator pile. Whirlwind, throws it into the Whirlwind.
just remember, you may want to model a Master of the Forge or a Tech Priest with a clipboard. Just saying, it's an option. All right.
So now we get to see the Predator's internals, and by that I mean we don't.
Yep, all externals all day long.
So I don't think there's anything different about the Predator. Like when it comes to it's slower by
It
2
stands.
kph.
It stands a little taller, about 3 feet taller,
Yep, because of the cannon.
because of the cannon turret, and like
Oh yeah, and this is something I do have to point out because it's somebody's going to be like, Alexis, it can't turn its turret because it'll hit its stack, which is true. On the model itself, it will kind of hit the stack, but on here, it's very clear what their design intention was.
was to have it be a little higher up on the neck.
Yep.
Yep. And that's what all the little cutouts are for. Even with like the stowage and everything on the back of the turret, you can see that it's meant to be able to rotate around.
Now, let's take a look at this gun, though, because there's not much different to talk about here.
Yep.
It's a bit wider with the sponsons, but that's not important. So its main armament is the autocannon up top, which more than likely has a auto loader.
Yep.
The heavy bolters on the side, which we know have auto loaders and have vision ports, and in extreme circumstances, the vehicle's machine spirit can take them over and fire them itself.
Yep.
It can turn its turret 360, which is good. Its elevation is minus 15 to plus 28. Yeah, this thing can't shoot you if you're like...
If you're close to it, you're probably safe.
Yeah.
As we went over with the Lehman Russ, like having a very tall turret that's it's set very far back gives you problems with declination of a main gun.
Now, if it did have the Storm Bolter, that's a little bit of a difference.
A pintle mount is meant for engaging things at close range. So, and again, Space Marines. It is entirely possible to just have one pop up, hop on that, and fight things that are in close range, and have the machine spirit take over and still engage certain priority targets.
Now, there is a driver and a gunner to this one, which is cool.
Yep, the gunner / commander. And yeah, so still only 2 people inside of it.
Now, its main armament for an autocannon with auto reloading shots and everything is 120 rounds. That doesn't seem right.
It's not a lot, but at the same time, we're talking about like the autocannon is going to be fighting not like you as an autocannon predator. If you had autocannons and heavy bolters, you couldn't hurt other autocannon heavy bolter predators.
Yeah.
Because none of your weapons could hurt each other. So it's something to keep in mind is that there's a very real chance that a tank can run up against another tank that it just cannot fight. The armor can be too thick.
Play World of Tanks, you'll run into this problem.
Yeah, you'll definitely run into it very quickly.
Now, we do have to point this out. Yes, they can kill each other on the tabletop. Yes, they can kill each other in the lore, but what we're saying is it's not a good matchup for them.
Yeah, you're not going after your ideal target. And if you're not going up against your ideal target in a real war scenario, you have failed at planning or you have failed at execution, or you failed before any of that even happened, and you failed with intelligence. And that's not going to end well for you.
Nope.
So you always want to be fighting things that you are meant to be fighting, and that's why the Master of the Forge sends rhinos only to war zones where they are going to be useful.
Yep.
So you're not going to send the or you're not going to send the.
Also, they do have the reconnaissance vehicle with the land speeder to test the battlefield out.
Yeah, you're
zip around as quickly as possible, get back with that intelligence, and tell the predators where they need to be.
Yeah, and then split them off, and they can go running around.
Which is equivalent to what we do today with, like...
Yeah, so there's an entire MOS, military occupational specialty, for cavalry units called Cav Scout.
And no, they're not horseback.
No, they are not horseback as much as they like to pretend to be. They still award things like spurs and
really
Stetsons for deployments and certain honors. I love giving them a hard time because I'm infantry, so people say we compete, but we really don't because they can't compete with us.
Shots fired.
Moving on. I will get it as good as I give it. So... The cavalry units will have cavalry scouts, and they will be in very lightly armored Humvees, maybe slightly up-armored ones, but their whole purpose is to go and find where the enemy forces are, and then radio back to Bradleys, Strikers, and Abrams, and then have those heavily armored, bigger bore guns actually engage targets of opportunity.
Yep, and we can actually see this with the land speeder, which is both essentially a helicopter and Humvee in one.
Yeah.
This thing can move over 1,000 miles per hour. It can leave the stratosphere.
Mm-hmm.
It can enter the stratosphere. And yes, I'm not kidding. Even though the Space Marines are, exposed, they can dive through the atmosphere, which means that the Space Marines armor can survive 6,000 degrees, but that's a whole nother point.
Yep.
Which I have to keep stating, by the way, because people keep telling me, no, you're wrong, and I'm like, here's the lore that shows me I'm right.
It's right here.
But those vehicles will dart around the battlefield, and they'll even mark targets for whirlwinds.
Yep, and with orbital bombardment, lasing targets is a huge aspect of modern warfare. Doing a combined arms, everything is about getting the correct unit to the correct spot on the battlefield and having them actually be combat effective. An Abrams against infantry is going to be a slaughter if the Abrams gets the drop on the infantry. That's true. But that Abrams is using fuel, it's using ammunition, the crew inside are going to get tired, they are using up food and water and supplies. And then when that Abrams has to turn around and refuel and rearm and resupply, what happens if an enemy tank shows up on the battlefield then?
Yep.
Now you have an under-equipped, underfed, underwater, underhydrated crew trying to run around with less ammunition, less fuel time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just not good for you. You always want to maximize your resources and your returns.
Now, in the case of the Predator Destructor, it's going to be using its heavy bolters to fight infantry, and its main cannon is going to be fighting light vehicles to heavy infantry. But it's not going to be shooting at enemy tanks if you're a smart commander. And this is even if you play 40k, by the way, you don't want to shoot an autocannon at a tank. You won't get your points back.
No, you shoot that at buggies. You shoot it at
Space Marines.
You shoot at Space Marines. You take pot shots at flying vehicles and flying monsters.
Yep.
If you're going to be fighting a tank, you bring a bigger, better gun.
Yep. Like the las cannon, which is the best weapon in 40k.
Yep. All right. Color schemes.
Without it having the pintle-mounted weapon, this thing is pretty much harmless if you're within 20 meters of it.
As the rule with just general armored vehicles, if they are very high up on the ground, and you are a dismounted infantry unit and a battle is going on, you can get really close to enemy vehicles. And this is not a I suppose you could. The U.S. military has multiple training locations all around the country and even in Germany as well. And we have dedicated units who work as opposition forces for our operations. So they will dress up like near-to-peer enemy forces. They will be trained in their tactics, and they'll be given their equipment. it is actually a lot of fun when you are able to get past how miserable you are during these exercises, because they're always absolute worst case scenarios. But in locations like Fort Polk, Louisiana, there's the Joint Readiness Training Center, and they have several refurbished T-70 tanks. And they will just drop them randomly scattered throughout the battle space. And that tank may not realize you're there. It may just roll right past you. You may notice the tank is there long before they notice that you are there. Like, inside of a big metal box, it is loud.
Metal
boxes. And if there's some sort of, like, firing of the main gun that's going on, if they're engaging another target, as an infantry guy, you are able to maneuver. And maneuvering is what keeps infantry alive. Like, infantry don't want to be stuck in trenches. Infantry don't want to be places where they can be mortared or bombarded. If the Predator is going to shoot at an enemy Rhino, and it gives me the extra few seconds I need to get close enough to, like, throw a crack grenade, throw a melt-a-bomb, something like that, I'm going to take it.
Yep.
Like, I will do everything that I can. Yeah.
Now, granted, inside the vehicle itself, it does have auspexes and things of that nature to try to detect that. But
yeah, there is just a Space Marine in there. He may open a hatch and pull a bolt pistol on me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a much better option than being in front of the thing.
Yeah. There's also error that can happen. Space Marines can get overconfident.
Yep.
It's one of their main weaknesses.
It's definitely the main weakness of anyone who's descended from Imperial fists.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right.
He's adorable.
Look at him. He's a boat.
Actually does look like a boat.
He does look like a boat.
Huh.
Does that not look like a gladiator to you?
Oh, look. What the hell? Yeah, that's the old Ork truck.
Oh, yeah.
That's the battle fortress.
See, we just get to find all sorts of weird stuff in these books.
That's so cool. It's the battle fortress without the thing on top of it.
Is that? I just realized that. You see that icon there?
Yeah. He's got Wi-Fi.
He's got Wi-Fi. All right. So, yeah, some very cool stuff going on. I find it interesting that the Blood Angels one that's featured in here.
Oh, that's an Ork battle wagon, apparently.
Oh, there we go.
But that's the battle fortress.
Yep. In ye olden days. Oh, man.
Yeah, they have the baby.
Yep, so...
Which I think is actually a better design for the tank.
It kind of is, actually. It's much lower to the ground. The gun sits, like, further forward, so it has better declination. Yeah.
It's just a better design.
It's just a better
Predator.
design. Like...
It's not a good design.
No, it's not a great design. A lot of the first run of French tanks post-World War I were small little two-man tanks that were just notoriously horrific to be inside. But they did have this sort of, like, sloped with one vision slant kind of front driver compartment that would actually open from the front.
Oh, jeez.
So they may look ridiculous, but it's kind of cool. I do love this.
This is French. They should put these exclusively these ones with the Deathcore Krieg, since they're French.
That would be kind of cool, I think.
Yeah.
I'd be totally down with like a small little like 1920s era like French tank for the Death Corps of Krieg.
That'd be so cool.
It'd be so neat. GW, get on it.
GW, make them more French, please.
I will say this: of all of the camo patterns we have seen so far, this is my favorite.
It does look really cool.
It does look really cool. So talking about camo, just real fast, just like 2 seconds. So the reason you see tiger stripe camo becoming a thing, especially in the 20th to 21st century, this pattern that gets repeated over and over and over again actually helps break up your silhouette. So like, for instance...
Yeah, my tanks stand out very, 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 very hard.
Not only do they stand out, because a tank just stands out. It's very hard to hide a tank.
Yeah.
But the issue is, I can see where the tank starts and where the tank ends. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's moving. I just have to follow the one solid block of mass.
Yeah.
As this thing moves, if trees are moving past behind it or shadows run across it, I can lose where the leading edge or the rear edge is for just a second at long ranges. And that's usually all you need. because in order to just take out a tank in one shot, there are usually very few places that you can hit in order for it to be a kill shot in one go.
Now, I do want to point this out as well. In the 40k lore, typically when Space Marines are fighting Space Marines, it doesn't matter what type of camouflage they use, unfortunately, because they can see you through different types of medias. They can spot you with auspexes and things of that nature. So when Space Marines fight Space Marines, they typically don't use active camouflage. They'll use things like camoline cloaks, which disrupt their silhouette entirely, making them appear transparent. They use things like suspensors and things of that nature to nullify the sound that they make when they move. This is why the Invictor Warsuit is actually like one of the best Dreadnought designs ever, because it can do both of these things. But when Space Marines have to fight things like Ork or Eldar, they typically actually paint their armor.
And this is in one of the White Dwarfs that came out earlier this year. They actually go over some of the cool, like, alternate camo patterns that you can do.
Now, granted, not all Space Marines do this, because Space Marines are honor-bound. In other words, they're too stupid to do it. But a good chunk of Space Marines, like the Dark Angels, will do it.
The Raptors will do it.
The White Scars will do it. But it's very, very, very rare to see. Earlier editions depicted this quite a bit. Newer editions, they tried to make them look more like icons, so they stick to their standard colors and everything, which is cool, and I like it.
It's interesting. All right.
13, 11, 10, I was right.
All right, you got that one.
Yes!
You got that one.
I love my Predators. There's a Warhound behind it. And again, we get to see the cone around the Annihilator shooting, and a lot of people want to know, like, I keep pointing this out, by the way. There's an electromagnetic field that's keeping the beam together, and you can see where it builds up before letting it out. Because a laser doesn't do this. It usually just beams out and does that at the end. So this electromagnetic field that's around it fires out almost as fast as the weapon itself.
All right. So, we can skip a great portion of this one. But there is one thing I want to bring up more than anything.
What?
The Predator Annihilator is a Space Wolf creation.
Yep.
They took a Long Fangs las cannon and they slapped it in there. So if you're looking to really fluff up your Space Wolves, pun intended, use Predator Annihilators.
Yeah, it's kind of like what is it? Dark Angels use the Angelus Land Raider, the Land Raider Ares, with the Demolisher cannon, the Land Raider Crusader for the Black Templar, the Ball Predator for the Blood Angels.
Everyone has like a weird little variant, so you may as well just throw it in. But
also, the Predator Annihilator is kind of good still.
But
it actually point for point outdoes the Gladiator.
I would not be shocked by that.
Just because of 4 las cannons.
Yeah, 4 las cannons. 4 speed of light, like, shots. Always great.
Is there anything that we really need to talk about?
No.
The Stormbringer is the name of the las cannons on top.
Yep, you get 1,000 shots before the heat actually warps everything.
Yeah, let's just read that really quickly.
Okay, sure, yeah. Notable features. The Mars Pattern Mark IV-B Predator mounts twin-linked Stormbringer las cannons with flash dampeners and focusing rings powered by diaquartzoid crystal batteries for maximum efficiency. Each las cannon barrel is good for about 1,000 shots before warping means it must be replaced.
So that's exactly what I was talking about. Those rings, that's actually what this is.
Yep.
Like, I love the fact that they got that correct. Like, because GW has this weird ability to predict certain things correctly, like how demons work by being from alternate realities and projecting themselves into real space using quantum mechanics, which is the most random thing that they got correct. But the other thing is, around their plasma cannons, their plasma guns, and their las weapons, they actually have a way to fire them.
Yep. You gotta be able to focus it all. I really do like that they have about 1,000 shots before warping means they must be replaced, because that's something we actually deal with all the time in the real world.
Yeah, with like machine guns. Well, any gun actually.
Barrels have a limited lifetime, and it's not something a lot of people think about. It's like, oh yeah, well, it's going to be good forever. It's like, if you personally own a firearm, chances are your barrel will never need to be replaced. However, weapons are handed down through the armory to soldiers for decades before they get replaced. And these things are treated very roughly. They are fired a lot. The ammunition that is used is like discount bin garbage. It's really terrible stuff. And it corrodes barrels. It like makes them have all sorts of issues later on in life. And this is without them firing to the point where they actually start to glow and heat, because then the barrels will actually start to deform and dent. And eventually, a barrel can just be ruined.
Well, that actually could explain weapon destroyed results for Space Marine vehicles. It's not that the opponent shot it.
Yeah.
It's that it took some damage early on, and then the las cannon firing destroyed the barrel.
That flaw just did it. Yeah, it's entirely possible. So, yeah. Beyond that, it's like, it's all pretty standard.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, lore-wise, Space Wolves made them because they needed ways to kill Traitor Legion dreadnoughts and tanks.
They couldn't just run up and slash at it. Probably be way more effective.
Remember, these were in the days where a Traitor Legion dreadnought went crazy.
Yeah,
every time you fielded it. So
now, this thing says it can go from 15 to 28. It barely can.
Yeah, this is another. The design page is not the reality of the miniature.
Yeah, but even on this page itself, and if I can steal your pencil again,
yeah,
this weapon is going down that much,
yeah.
Which means there's a lot of space in front of you.
There's a big dead zone. But again, if you're
that's what that
bringing this thing,
Stormbolter is for.
You bring the Stormbolter for that, and if you're there to hunt tanks, that's fine.
Yep.
Again, we see the little baby.
But even this one, like, look at this real quick.
Yeah, no, he's got a much better...
Easily a better design.
Yeah. But metal boxes.
All right, so let's take a look at this thing really quickly. It's a Mars pattern. It has 1,100 rounds for its heavy bolter, if it has heavy bolters. But this is my favorite part, and why would you never stop fielding these things?
Yep.
Unlimited ammo.
Yep. Until you hit 1,000 shots, and then you have to swap the barrel out.
So you keep extra barrels in it.
Maybe.
Or you keep a command vehicle near you with a couple.
Yeah, you can swap the barrel out on like a 50 caliber machine gun as one person, but it's not easy or fun to do it quickly.
No, but even still, like retreating this thing, getting a Trojan to fix it.
Swap it out, yeah. No, it would be a phenomenal change.
This thing can do 68, which is comparable to the speed of the Rhino, so this thing is fast.
Yep, it's 40 some odd miles per hour. So
just about.
Yep.
50 kph off-road, so it's roughly like 28 miles per hour, I think, is the conversion. I could be wrong on that. I know it's a little bit higher than 25 miles per hour.
Yeah.
The gun is going to be shooting at things where its depression makes sense.
Yeah.
From a range that its depression makes sense.
This thing's going to be hunting tanks, so there's no reason to super stress about it. I do like that they do show it with the reinforced armor kits.
Mm-hmm. And where the reinforced armor is.
Yep, so protecting all the engines so that if something does get through, like the whole vehicle can keep on chugging.
Like you have to punch through at that point 4 layers to get inside the damn thing?
Yeah, 4 layers.
Because the Rhino has 2 and then it puts 2 on top of it.
Yep.
So,
all right.
Let's go on
Looks like we got the actual interior though.
All right.
So, if we want to.
I love this shot. I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for laser weapons.
Like when they really let the art design team go crazy, they really do. So
So let's go ahead and zoom in just a bit. Try to get this all in. There we go. Good enough.
There we go. All right, awesome.
Whoop.
Oh.
There we go.
There we go. Look at that. It's everything you expected more.
Heavy bolter ammunition storage. Actually, it's stored pretty efficiently.
Yep, it's stored away from where everyone is, and because we know that's all. all auto-loaded. Yep, fire extinguisher in there. Where's the medical kit?
Yeah, let's find the medical kit.
Does this thing follow OSHA guidelines? That's the real question. I don't see it.
Oh no. No.
Oh no.
They got rid of the...
They were doing so well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like here's a very clear, like, what was it, 11? Yeah, 11. So the commander/gunner sits here. Like, top half of his body is inside the gun cupola.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's where you want to put him. The fact that he controls everything from one location is very interesting to me. Like, I think that's very cool that he can control all of the guns other than the pintle-mounted Stormbolter on top. Just from within, especially with the side mountings and everything like that.
So what I'm thinking is, this tank probably operates much like this, where it'll just stop using one weapon if it's aiming at a target that's this way, unless there's a separate target on this side as well. So it will pick out that target, and then the rest of the guns will turn towards the real threat. So if it has to, it can engage on this side to, say, another Rhino that's coming up on it.
A heretic weeaboo Rhino.
And if there's another Rhino, which you can barely see, but one right in front of it. Now, assume these are miles apart, okay? But this gun would target this vehicle, these two would target this vehicle. Now, back in the day, you couldn't do that. You had to target everything, so you literally always had to head first into things with Predators.
And then Power of the Machine Spirit became a thing.
Yep, but these things couldn't take that.
Yep.
Demon engines could. But that's how this gun would fight more than likely, where the gunner inside would pick the first target, pick the second target, and then the machine would rotate to where it needs to go as quickly as possible. And with all the animations we've seen for the Predator, we know that it rotates faster than the Leman Russ.
Yep.
And then it just engages both simultaneously.
And it's also faster than the Leman Russ due to the power that it gets to its independent tread, so that means it can turn faster than the Leman Russ can too, increasing the speed of rotation.
Yep.
So yeah.
What is this one, though? That's
18. That is your turret drive system and manual override. In case the motors go down, someone is cranking it around.
Yep.
Which, that sucks, but you know what? It's better than not being able to turn the turret at all.
Yeah, and we see the thickest part of the armor is right in the front. It has several layers. Punching through this thing is going to be tough. Its suspension system is the same as the Rhinos. I don't know how... Does this mean this gunner has to get down and reload the weapons? Ooh.
That's for the heavy bolters. These are auto-loaded. You can actually see some really cool examples of auto-loaders in modern-day military equipment through the use of chain guns. They're called chain guns because they use a chain-based drive mechanism.
Okay.
So it is a mechanical mechanism that actually pulls the links up into the firearm, strips the links out. I do not have one because I gave it to a friend of mine when I left the service because he thought it was really cool and I didn't think I would ever need it.
And suddenly you met me and you're like, wow, I wish I kept this random piece of military hardware.
It wasn't even military hardware, it was a mock-up, but they're really fascinating to look at because it's essentially like a clockwork mechanism that is actually feeding and loading these guns and fires them, and you see them in we call them Gatling guns. They are just GAU series weapons that fire hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rounds in just seconds time.
Now, I assume the heavy bolter doesn't actually fire that fast?
Sure, it doesn't have to. But, like, we could have, like, a chain mechanism that just feeds these all together. And what you would do is you would coil all your ammunition. So it's all laying on top of each other, right? Just, like, stacks upon stacks upon stacks. Mm-hmm. And then the last link, you link to the next box.
Okay.
So as they get fed through the weapon, they pull out, and then they pull the next box forward. So there's ways that you could engineer such a thing without having to have the commander and the gunner jump down, out, run over, grab it.
Now, we do have to talk about one of the weaknesses of the weapon itself. Mm-hmm. Exposed wires.
Yes, exposed wires. Exposed wires are the bane of the grimdark universe.
Yeah. So you could... But there's no exposed wires on the main gun. Yep. And because there's an access hatch right there, the gunner, if they have time... could go down and repair this thing
Yeah, if something goes terribly wrong, it's entirely possible.
I gotta just make sure that pin stays in place.
Yep.
I had to pin the weapons. Alright, so that's the Predator. Now, what do you actually think about this tank?
Is that the last one we have? Ooh. We see other variants. Let's just double check.
It talks about
We
the
have
ball
one
Predator.
other one. Well, we are filming this on the day of the Blood Angel release.
Yeah.
So, Ball Predator, hey, it's cool. It's a version that comes from Ball.
It goes balls deep.
It balls deep. With,
All right.
With 2 A's.
So let's get to that ball Predator. Alright, 13, 11, 10, same as before.
Same as before.
Has laser cannons.
Yeah.
Technically, it should be pronounced laser cannons instead of lads.
I don't know. It's a linguistic
Nightmare.
oddity. Like, because laser is just an acronym anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways. So, Ball Predator. You don't know much about it. But that's because they don't tell you much about it. It is not officially sanctioned by the Adeptus Mechanicus. They believe that it could potentially be like this big black spot on Blood Angel honor and reputation. But essentially all that you get is heavy flamers on the side of a big old tank, and then twin-linked assault cannons.
Or a big giant heavy flamethrower on the top.
Yeah, this is meant for killing so many infantry out in the open that it's just ludicrous.
Yeah, this thing's going through and burning down a jungle.
Yeah, pretty much.
We don't really need to go through its history. It's based off the STC. And yeah, its notable features, part of this main difference, featuring a twin-linked assault cannon and sponson designed to tank, heavy flamethrowers. That's really it.
Yep.
It's same speed, same elevations, just copy-pasted. It only has 120 rounds, 1,200 rounds for its assault cannons. That
doesn't feel like a lot.
No,
that doesn't feel like a lot at all.
That's like a burst.
Like, we don't know the rate of fire because canonically they never give us one.
No, they really don't. But from the animations...
From the animations, it seems like they're firing a lot of rounds. 20 individual shots with
For the flamethrowers.
Which the flamethrowers used to be awful. They used to be so bad on these tanks.
Because they couldn't shoot.
Because you couldn't shoot them at the same time as everything else. And also you had to place the template so it didn't cover your own tank, which just made it very strange. Yeah, it was just weird. Alright, that's the Ball Predator.
So, the Predator, does it get a pass?
No, it doesn't for me.
Even with las cannons.
Even with las cannons, it doesn't, because the Predator, it's a cool concept. It's a cool idea for having a super modular design that integrates like the best of everything. But because it is so general, it has a lot of difficulty just doing hyper-specific roles. Like, the Annihilator is shown in its own lore to be a battlefield modification in order to counteract a specific enemy that they were having trouble against. So, like, Ball Predator, same thing. It is a hyper-specialized variant. Exceptions do not prove the rule. These things are designed to fight one certain type of enemy at a time. It requires a lot of specialization. They're not generalist vehicles, and they don't have a troop capacity like they did originally, apparently. And as we're about to see, you can take something that has slightly less firearms on it, but
And it's just better.
But yeah, it can bring troops to the battlefield. It fills the role that it's meant to fill.
Here's the thing. Would you rather have the Predator or the Lehman Russ?
I'd rather have the Predator than the Lehman Russ, honestly.
The Lehman Russ is too big.
Lehman Russ is too big, it's too slow. The Predator, since it's got the las cannons, and we know las cannons can defeat a Lehman Russ, I would rather have the extra mobility. I'd rather have the ability to be part of a rapid strike force, because that was one of the main problems we had with the Lehman Russ, was if you take a Lehman Russ and a Chimera, the Chimera speeds off past it. These two vehicles have almost the same speed. So that means that I can have a convoy of, a Rhino out in front with troops, doing recon for the tank, checking for booby traps, checking for any ambushes, anything like that. And if something happens, this is fast enough to get out of the way, deploy troops to support the actual armored force.
Yep.
Do I like the idea that you just threw a bunch of extra armor onto an APC and called it a tank? No. Is that a personal preference? Yeah, kind of. The U.S. military is doing this right now with our strikers. We are getting ready to upgrade them to much larger cannons while keeping essentially the rest of the chassis the same. There's a big debate right now amongst military historians and military experts where we don't know how that's going to pan out because...
We're literally making the Predator.
We kind of are. The Striker kind of does everything for us already, but now they want to do everything and then a little bit extra.
Okay, so here's a question for you. The Predator, and we know the battlefield formations for the Space Marines.
Yes.
It's much the same as the Imperial Guard. Mm-hmm. Predator versus an Abram.
Predator versus an Abram. Abram's got a just massive one primary gun on it. It's low to the ground, and from all the speed research we've done on it, they go about the same speed as one another. I think a lot of it comes down to who gets to fight first. The Space Marine inside has a huge advantage over an Abrams crew, in that an Abrams crew must communicate between each other in order to make the weapon system function correctly. A Space Marine commander, who is also the gunner, is linked to his machine, unlike the Leman Russ. So he has those millisecond advantages as far as speed and reaction go. I think a Predator could take on a Leman Russ. I think it could take on a Leman Russ, and I think it could take on an Abrams. But again, it's hard to say. I think if I had to choose, I would take a Predator over an Abrams just because
let's
all
make
the las cannons.
Let's make it a bit more fair.
Different story altogether. This thing doesn't do it.
Yeah. If it's this one...
If it is 4 las cannons, that is really hard to say no.
Because one shot blows through the Abrams and kills the entire crew.
Yeah, if you're saying that this thing, so like a standard autocannon, so let's say this is a 75mm autocannon or something like that, it's going to have a hard time punching through the armor on a lot of like standardized battle tanks that are currently used in the world today. Is it something that you would like to have? Yeah, if I don't have any other options, but if I have other options, I'd rather take the dedicated thing rather than the, like, sits really high, doesn't have a very serious amount of angled or, like, alternate armors on it. Like I was saying, this flat armor profile
is fine for the Rhino, terrible for the Predator?
Yeah, totally fine for the Rhino. The Rhino is not meant to draw the attention of things that want to kill tanks. The Predator, however, will draw that attention, and having a flat surface on a tank causes a lot of problems, especially when it's really high up. There's also the whole issue of, while you do have armored cowlings for the side weapons, it's not like the Leman Russ, where it's a completely enclosed sponson, and thus it's armored and insulated against damage. A major hit to this, you lose that weapon. You lose the big reason you designed the tank this way.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we're about to talk about the Razorback, and all of the reasons why this is better than that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So, Predator Annihilator is a strong maybe.
Predator Annihilator is a maybe. If I can get enough of them, yes.
And if a Space Marine was crewing it.
If a Space Marine is crewing it, 100% sure.
Yeah.
However, if it is the Destructor or the Ball Predator, I'm good. I'll pass on that. I'd rather, invest in something else.
All right. So Annihilator gets a 5 out of 10, right?
6 out of 10. It's better than just 50-50. But that's the last cannon talking.
It's literally, it always boils down to that with these tanks.
Yeah, can it take a las cannon? Yeah, it's probably better than nothing.
It could take a las cannon. It's good.
Yeah, it's decent enough.
All right, so let's get on to the Razorback. All right, so moving on, we have the Razorback, which
Yay!
I don't actually have a Razorback. Typically don't use them.
Yeah.
You can't bring them in 30k, so I don't have them.
Yep, that's fair.
Because, like, that's what my whole Marine army is. My baby Marines are just a 30k army.
Yeah. Alright, so, the Razorback. The Razorback is primarily a troop transport variant of the Rhino. Equipped with turret-mounted heavy weapons and carrying extra ammunition, the Razorback surrenders some of its transport capacity for extra firepower.
That seems fair.
Yeah, seems like a fair idea. The STC template for the Razorback was rediscovered in Millennium 36 by Chief Artisan Tilvius whilst on expedition across the Southern Rim. The Razorback find was the main triumph of his quest, although rumors abound that another STC template was found, but has never seen production. After rediscovery, the template was rapidly adopted as part of the STC canon, and in just under 200 years, the first Razorbacks were being field tested. Existing records already indicated that a troop-carrying variant of the Predator had been a forerunner of the Predator tank, and the Razorbacks seemed to fit the description closely. When Tilvius returned with evidence of the vehicle, the Lords of Mars quickly recognized it, the omens were deemed good, and work commenced.
Seems fair enough.
Seems fair. He went, found a thing, brought it back.
Also, we can now see just how high the Rhino sits up.
Yep.
And we can tell that this Marine is 8 foot tall, 7.6 technically. So about at his midsection is almost 4 feet up.
You can also tell that he is photoshopped in.
Yes, he is.
Yes, because otherwise, he's about to have a really bad day.
Yep. But thanks to him being there, we know how...
We know how tall it is.
Yeah.
Let's see. Service record. Since M36, the Razorback, with its increased firepower, has filled the gap left by the Predator as it developed into a full battle tank. Originally, the Predator was also a troop carrier, and it may be that the Razorback design is a hangover from those early days. The Razorback, capable of carrying a demi-squad of 6 battle brothers, and providing heavy weapon support for the squad on the ground, is a useful addition to the Space Marines' armory.
Now, interesting enough, and I am going to point this out, the Annihilator is just a Razorback variant.
Yeah, it is.
It's just you flip it around and you got the turret at the front.
Yep.
And it's for sisters.
Very much so. Some chapter masters believe it fails as a troop transport, not being able to carry a full squad, and fails as a tank, lacking armor protection, and not carrying enough heavy weapons to take on enemy heavy armor in a tank battle.
Now, I gotta say something about that chapter master. Clearly, they don't know how to play the goddamn game.
The fool. Other commanders find it useful in a number of roles. Firstly, providing protection for squads in support of armored attacks by land raiders and predators. Secondly, it is used in a heavy reconnaissance role, supporting bikes or attack bikes as they seek out the enemy and launch lightning strikes ahead of a Space Marine main force.
I think the tank gives it away then.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Fair enough.
Thirdly, some commanders mix Razorbacks and Rhinos freely, with the Razorbacks providing instant suppressing heavy weapons fire as a Space Marine squad debus for an assault.
Is that a real word?
I don't know if that's a real word.
I feel like that's not a real word.
Anyways, notable features. The Razorback carries a turret-mounted heavy weapon. Different patterns of turrets have been used, from remote control turrets to open-top single crewed turrets, with the crewman protected by a gun shield. Why has that not been modeled? The remote turret uses the same targeting Logis engines as the Land Raider, providing efficient and rapid threat response, and reduces the crew requirement of the vehicle from 2 to 1. Given the manpower demands of a Space Marine chapter and the difficulty of keeping a chapter's manpower levels high, this is seen as the key advantage of the remote turret over crewed weapons. There have been many patterns and marks of Razorback turret employed through the years.
Including the Las Plaz, which is the best.
Yep. All the Burt.
See, there's
It's so cool. Like...
They're so rare, though.
Yeah, they're so old.
Oh, there's the multi-melta.
I
That one was my favorite.
This on one of these. That's
Right?
all I want.
So,
guess what,
speeds
Alexis?
and everything is
Copy
exactly the
paste?
same.
Yeah, copy paste.
Copy paste. It's exactly the same. In fact, even my notes say it's the same.
Yep. So yeah. So we'll just...
Wait, we can see this. The twin-linked heavy bolter at the top of it has 1,600 rounds, so it's blowing through that in one engagement.
Yep.
No secondary weapons of any kind. Typically, it can take a twin-linked storm bolter.
Yep.
and a hunter killer missile, but those aren't there just yet. It's 31 tons, so it's technically a bit heavier.
Like 2,000 pounds more?
Yeah,
That's probably the weight of the gun.
and the ammunition for it.
The ammunition, yeah. All right, let's flip to these so that we can talk about it real quick. So, here's what I like about this and the reason why I will die on this hill.
Hang on, I gotta point something out. Look at that depression.
Look at that.
It barely has any.
It barely has any until it turns the gun around.
Yep.
Turn the gun around.
Because the second you do this, the Razorback can turn all the way down just about.
Yep. So, the big reason I like
See?
the Razorback is because having a tall weapon platform is not a bad thing if you're hunting enemy vehicles. So the las cannon one works. The other thing that it's used for, and it calls it out expressly in its own lore, is as a suppressing fire vehicle. This thing is not meant to be like, it's just meant to be keeping heads down. So being able to crack shots over barricades and fortifications and down into enemy ranks, yeah, it doesn't need a massive depression. It does just get to fire willy-nilly.
But it's also a Space Marine shooting it as well.
It's also Space Marine. He's going to get somebody.
Yeah.
And if you're at long ranges, like, he's going to be totally fine. But again, just suppressing has a virtue of its own. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you can carry, like, a command squad. Command squad fits in there just fine. Command squad plus captain. Cool. You're off to the races. A Devastator team can ride inside one of these and get into a better fire position. Totally fine. Ready to go.
An Apothecarian and his team.
Yeah, an apothecary. You could have a casualty collection point set up that can defend itself. Like, there's lots of good little alternative ways to use the Razorback because it fills that role between Predator and Rhino. But here's the last part that, like, really sells it for me. Its silhouette is that of a Rhino. You don't see a giant turret in the center. You see, like, just some gun bits on the back, right? So if an enemy sees this and they know their designations between Rhino, Razorback, Predator, the Predator is going to draw more fire than the Razorback is. The Razorback is going to draw more fire than the Rhino is. But if your opponent doesn't know the difference, like if, say, you're an Orc commander and you don't know the difference between a Razorback with a heavy bolter versus a Predator with an autocannon, you're going to go after the one with the bigger gun anyways, which means that this has a longevity of its own just by being less of an assuming threat, while still very much being able to be used as a maneuverability element, used in a support role. Like, as a mainline fighter tank, no, but that's not its purpose.
Yeah.
And that's not what you would use it for, because you are Space Marines.
It'd be really cool as a field repair vehicle with the Tech Marine and his servitors inside.
Yeah, sure. Like, run that around. Mm-hmm. Yeah, covering fire for while the Tech Marine is running out and fixing stuff. Like, it feels... It has a role, and you can play towards that role really well. And this does get reflected in the tabletop, because your opponent, if he has other options, will tend to not fire at a Razorback.
Yep.
But if you have a Razorback just sitting there, and it's shooting and hitting with a las cannon every turn, it's making its points back very quickly.
All it needs is, what, 2 kills?
2 kills on, like, an average enemy, and, like, it gets very close to making up its points.
Yeah.
So...
And again, we see how it wants to engage, where its guns are always turned, its silhouette is this way, so its edging does help quite a bit.
It's what?
Edging.
Oh, okay.
Wow, what did you think I said?
Don't worry about it. We're moving on with our lives.
Anyway.
But anyways, yeah, like, that's all it has to do.
Also, I hate that they took away the multi-melta option.
Yeah, I mean...
It makes me sad. It gives me the big sad.
The big sads as opposed to the little sads.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and this is a great way to see that it can, because it has a smaller capacity for carrying folks, it's got no problem with one crew member sitting there and fighting a good fight. Everybody else can be out, taking an objective, securing a location, or just doing battlefield tasks.
Also, these things could probably just load up on ammunition and everything inside it.
Yeah,
and just servitor crew and just reload all weapons.
Yeah. There's no reason to think that you can't just use it as a gun truck that just runs around as part of a QRF, a quick reaction force. Because again, it moves as fast as the Rhinos do. So
Yep.
this is just a more heavily armed Rhino, which the Rhino's a perfectly fine vehicle because it's all about transporting the troops to objectives. This just adds the ability to suppress from your disembarkation point. So that's why I like it. I like it quite a bit.
So, does it get a pass?
Yeah, the Razorback totally gets a pass from me.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, especially the heavy bolter version.
Scale
I like
1
that
to
one a lot.
10?
I'd say an 8.
Ooh.
With the Rhino being an 8 as well. I think they are perfectly adequate vehicles. They are based off of the M113. The M113, if you could have put a bigger gun in the back, is an amazing vehicle.
And now we move on to the Whirlwind.
Now, yeah, the weirdo of the family.
Yeah, I mean, as an artillery tank, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to get to that here in a second. So, the Whirlwind provides a Space Marine chapter with highly mobile, close support, indirect fire artillery.
Wait, close support?
Yep. The name Whirlwind is used to cover a range of different patterns of multiple missile launchers on a Rhino chassis. They are used to saturate tactical targets with high explosive warheads before or during an attack. The Whirlwind is an ancient design, and many different patterns have been employed down the millennia. Many of these remain in service with various chapters across the galaxy.
Essentially a Whirlwind.
Essentially a Whirlwind, yeah. Unlike the Imperial Guard, Space Marine chapters do not rely heavily on artillery fire to achieve victory on the battlefield.
Because they're idiots.
Well, we'll get into that in a second. As rapid strike or shock troops, Space Marine chapters have no requirement to fire sustained artillery barrages to reduce enemy positions before an attack. They are rarely deployed long enough for such a long-range barrage to be effective. As a strike force, they need fast, highly mobile artillery, capable of delivering a brief but effective heavy barrage against specific tactical enemy targets. English. A Whirlwind can quickly unleash a high volume of firepower, albeit at relatively short range, against critical targets as assault troops identify them. Being able to react very quickly to the battlefield's tactical situation is one of the Whirlwind's chief advantages over slower, heavier artillery deployed by Imperial Guard regiments. It goes zoom zoom beep beep and then whoosh. it fires all the things.
Do you note how this missile pod looks a bit different
Yep.
than this one with 6 missiles?
Yeah. So the original design is based off of the Merles. They are very large. They look like semi-trucks with giant boxes on the back until the box lifts up, turns, and you see a collection of rockets inside. They are awe-inspiring to see fire, but it very rarely gets done these days outside of training environments. They were meant for fighting near-to-peer enemies, so people with our same level of technology, which we, as Americans, we don't fight that very often. We like fights that we know we can win.
America!
But yeah,
Come here to take you...
Coming here for your natural resources.
America! We're totally the good guys.
Oh, man. So, yeah, breathe. Okay.
I'm sorry.
You got this. Keep it together.
It's very difficult to talk about America and pretend we're the good guys.
Yeah. All right, focusing.
We're just about the same as the Imperium.
Yeah, so there are times. Okay. So yeah, firing a lot of just rockets onto a target, just being at close range in order to support them. We use mortar teams to this effect all the time. There was, like I said before, there was an M113 that was built around firing a 80 to 120 millimeter mortar system out of the back. Now,
Yep.
they weren't moving while they did it. They would stop first before they started firing that thing.
Apparently the Whirlwind doesn't.
Yeah, the Whirlwind doesn't have to.
Which is kind of cool, actually.
It's really cool. If you told me that I could have a rocket truck just following me around, like World War II Katyusha, which is a Russian Essentially, it was just lines of rockets on top of like these old farmer pickup trucks, and they would just fire them all off in sequence, and it was just devastating. But it was accurate, and it was as fast as my APCs, and it could keep up with my troops. That's really cool, and that's a tactical advantage that I'd want to have.
We're also starting to see just how useless the Dreadnought is.
Yeah, so the fact that the Dreadnought is the slowest thing, like, is just...
And it's not even the slowest by, like, a few miles per hour. It's slower by, like...
It's a
40 miles per hour slower than everything?
Yeah.
Actually, 36 miles per hour.
36 or 36 and change.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's going downhill and it starts rolling, maybe it catches up, but... Yeah, we already ripped on the Dreadnoughts hard enough. Let's
just deploy them by drop pod, leave them where they are.
Leave Grandpa in his stasis vault, okay? We'll pull him out for the Feast of the Allfather, and we will figure out, like, what he remembers this time.
Hey, do you remember anything? Back in my day!
Back in my day!
I used to punch heretics with a fist made of flesh.
You should have seen it! I was great!
Senile Dreadnought.
Senile Dreadnoughts.
Is this one demonically possessed? Nah, it's just Grandpa.
No, he's just...
Back in my day, we didn't let the Sisters of Battle exist.
He was part of the Great Crusade generation.
He is part of the Great Crusade.
I lived through the Great Apostasy. Well, I slept through most of it.
During M36, I was on the...
We're never gonna get through this. Help.
No, but you could definitely see like an old man trying to argue against the Sisters of Battle existing.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. It's like, what do you mean the Ecclesiarchy has a military arm?
They're not supposed to have any men. They're using women. Women? How dare they?
That's playing rules as written, not rules as intended.
That's illegal.
That's illegal. Can we get a shirt made that just has a dreadnought sitting there screaming, "That's illegal"?
All right, Cypher, you heard him. Get on it.
I'm sorry, Cypher.
All right, let's try.
Make sure he has a cane.
Back in my day, there were 20 Primarchs. Yeah, right, Grandpa. 21, actually.
We didn't talk about the 21st one. He's a weird kid.
Alpharius and Omegon definitely count as 2 Primarchs. I don't care what anybody says.
100%. 100%. Fight me and me.
All right, let's try.
All right.
We're almost through this. Okay.
Being able to fire indirectly means the Whirlwind can make best use of cover and does not need to expose itself to direct enemy fire. Its mobility means that after a fire mission, the vehicle can rapidly change position to avoid enemy return fire.
That's pretty useful.
Very useful. There are systems that exist in the modern world which let you calculate exactly where an artillery piece fired from. Mm-hmm. Based off of incoming noise data. It's a really crazy system of microphones that you can set up on multiple systems. So the second a round starts coming in, it can track its trajectory, and then a computer model can show you where it was fired from, with like a few meters of discrepancy. But considering it's an artillery piece, you only need to get within a few meters to be like, oh, hey, yes, the giant tube sticking out of the ground, I'm pretty sure it's that one. It's a safe bet. Well, where are we? Oh, the middle of Afghanistan? Yeah, it's the dudes in the pickup truck. There's no one around for 40 miles. It's him. Oh, man. It's so true. But being able to be maneuverable is really useful. Ask anybody who fought, like, in Afghanistan, who ever saw a pickup truck with a mortar plate welded in the back. They could drive right up next to your base, fire a bunch of rounds into it, whole base goes on lockdown for a little bit, and meanwhile they just drive away.
Jeez. It's just rude.
It's so rude. It's so inconsiderate. They do it in the middle of the night, too. It's super frustrating.
Wakes up everybody.
They never hit anything, but it's just annoying. It's like, grab your helmet, grab your flak jacket, okay, get into the bunker, alright. Tunk, tunk, tunk. Okay, is anyone dead? No? Okay, can I go back to sleep? Thank you. Next time, don't wake me up, just let it hit me. Everyone's had that moment where they're just, yeah, no, I don't care about the siren anymore. Using the Rhino chassis means it can easily be deployed and can keep up with the rest of a fast-moving Space Marine strike force. Ta-da!
Good.
Mobility is king in the battle space. For all its different patterns down the years, the various Whirlwinds remain broadly similar vehicles, with similar capabilities. Two patterns that do vary from the Codex
Broadly
standards.
similar.
Broadly.
Similar.
Similar. Two patterns that do vary from the Codex standard are the Imerious and Hunter, which are specialized anti-aircraft vehicles used by many Space Marine chapters. The Imerious is equipped with automatic tracking and targeting equipment and guided anti-aircraft missiles for close air defense.
That's actually super good.
Yeah, it'd be real handy to just have random missiles that can fire off and hit enemy aircraft, especially
Without
if you're...
even stopping?
Yeah, like, why not?
No, it's weird that they came out with the Stalker and the Hunter later on.
I was about to point out.
The Hunter is mentioned here.
Yep, the Hunter's mentioned here, and this was a long time ago, and what, the Hunter tank only came out in 2017?
I know it was a 7th edition vehicle.
So...
Maybe a 6th edition.
So 16, 17 sometime in there?
Yeah.
Still, that's 30 years almost?
Yeah.
It's a long time.
And those are dedicated anti-aircraft vehicles.
They are indeed, and they do fire the missiles. All the missiles. Alright. So, where were we? Oh, although anti-aircraft defense is its main role, the targeting array is versatile enough to be able to engage ground targets, effectively becoming a large rack of hunter-killer missiles. This would only be used as a weapon of last resort, but Space Marine commanders need their combat vehicles to be versatile, as they often must fight whilst heavily outnumbered by their enemies. As well as its largest system and warhead, most of the actual missile contains the fuel it needs to fly relatively short distances at very high speed, intercepting fast-moving incoming aircraft. These missiles are not large enough to... hold breath for effect.
Oh, jeez, there's a lot.
Reach high altitude like a Manticore AA missile, but are highly effective against low-flying enemy as they make strafing runs. The other anti-aircraft pattern of the Whirlwind is called the Hunter. It is a far older STC variant than the Imerious, but still sees service on many battlefields. Recently, several chapters engaged in the Third Armageddon War fielded the Hunter. As an alternative to the standard high-explosive warheads usually issued to Whirlwinds, there are some other types of missile a Space Marine commander can utilize. Whilst rarely used, some chapters keep small stockpiles of these missiles in case of sudden need. The first is the Scatterable Mine Warhead, which, upon detonating, showers the target area with small proximity-fused mines, creating an instant minefield.
That's amazing. Why is that not used?
Mines being a purely defensive weapon means Space Marine chapters do not often have need of them. But during attacks, denying the enemy easy routes for counterattacks can make the difference between success and failure. The second missile type is a short-range anti-aircraft missile. These missiles can be used to provide close air defense to a Space Marine force, although the Imerious and the Hunter are specialized vehicles specifically designed for this role. The issue of anti-aircraft missiles can turn a standard Whirlwind into a stand-in air defense vehicle, but after several Whirlwinds belonging to the Exorcist chapter failed to engage in incoming Ork bombers, most were withdrawn from service. That's bad.
Outsmarted by a dumbass.
By a fungus.
That's good.
The final type of missile is the extended range variant. Tech Marines of the Iron Fist chapter first developed this Whirlwind into long-range bombardment artillery during the assault on High Vortis. It was not regarded as a success, but several other chapters have since attempted to emulate the Iron Fists. The necessary increase in fuel and the size of the missile's rocket engine resulted in a reduction of the amount of high explosive carried, in the warhead, and a reduction in the size of the resulting explosion. The loss of destructive power meant that the long-range missiles failed to cause sufficient damage to be effective in the bombardment role.
Holy crap, Space Marines don't know how to bombard things.
At least they're trying new things. Scatterable mine warhead.
That sounds awesome.
The modern term is bomblets, BOMBLETS. So it is something that some militaries have in development.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say one of those militaries is ours.
Unofficially, officially, yeah. The U.S. military is one of the few major world powers that hasn't made a solid effort at discouraging the use of mines by people who are not us. So yeah, not necessarily a great thing to have, but the entire role of using it as an assistant to an offensive attack that's a valid tactic. It's called denying. Doing a denying or delaying action is a huge part of a successful assault. Because if you can complete your mission while the opponent has to take a longer way around to get to that same objective to reinforce a beleaguered force, great.
Why do I feel like that wouldn't be effective against orcs? Because they would just send in a Gretchen wave.
They'd send in a Gretchen wave, or they would just not care. Yeah, you have to have an opponent who's smart enough to realize what's happening to him. So maybe against blood axes, they would be like, "Oh, we're gonna go around this time." But if you're talking about somebody like the Goth clan, more than likely they've got the boys to just run over that thing.
Yeah.
Short range anti-aircraft missile, yeah, sure.
All right, so we're continuing with this. Oh man, so this thing is cool.
Yep, it's very cool.
But it looks like every time they implemented it, it failed.
They keep trying weird things and it doesn't work out.
Maybe they should stick to letting the Mechanicus do it.
Maybe they should. At the same time, it's fun to see Space Marines trying to innovate stuff for themselves.
Yeah.
That's super interesting to me. Quick note about terminology. Rockets versus missiles. Most people are familiar with it nowadays, but so a rocket is what's called a dumb-fired weapon. You aim it, and it goes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, any sort of advanced system other than stabilizers. So it will usually spin in order to create a...
It's like a football.
Yeah, what was it? Centripetal force that forces it to, go on a more accurate trajectory. A missile tends to have some sort of guidance system or tracking system and a control surfaces on it that will actually adjust and modify its flight. So having something like hunter-killer missiles are great because you can fire them at a target and be relatively sure that they're going to hit.
I'm also... I am still stunned that they don't reload the hunter-killer missile. Considering the hunter-killer missile is literally kept on one of the ports and they could just pull it back in. Because it folds up inside the thing.
Yeah, it does. So we do have a modern equivalent for hunter-killer missiles. They are tow missiles. Essentially they are a wire-guided missile that can be fired. The launcher itself is reusable. The missile tube is actually disposable. The missile is already loaded inside of a tube, and there's a whole mechanism you have to go through to get the old tube out and get the new tube in.
Alright, so then, yeah, that makes sense.
It just takes, a little bit of extra effort, but there are dedicated tow trucks in every heavy weapons company that I've ever been a part of that has, a rack of 6 to 8 extra tow missiles in the back of the Humvee during operations. And it is still a whole production. The whole crew gets involved in firing that thing. But they are really fun to do, and you have a surprising amount of control over them when they're fired. And because they are actuatable, they count as a missile as opposed to a rocket.
So what's weird is the hunter-killer missile for the Imperial Guard is just a rocket.
Yeah.
I think it's more or less just a naming thing, just to make it easy.
Yeah, just a naming convention at that point.
Yeah.
All right, I believe we were on notable features.
Yes.
All right, The number of missiles carried by a Whirlwind varies by pattern. Not shocking. For example, a fully loaded Helios pattern carries just 6 missiles, although they are larger than the ancient Thalia pattern, with its distinctive boxed-shaped launcher, which holds 12. Is that?
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This carries 20. This is the cluster rockets.
There we go.
Well, not the rockets, but you know what I mean.
Let's see. So, holds 12 smaller missiles, or the Mark II Mars pattern Whirlwind, which holds 10 missiles in twin clusters of 5. In a Whirlwind, the transport capacity of the Rhino chassis is turned over to ammunition stowage, containing racks of extra missiles. These must usually be loaded into the launcher manually. This is a time-consuming process, meaning once a Whirlwind has fired all of its missiles, it usually withdraws into cover to rearm.
That makes sense.
Yep. Moving after firing is standard practice to avoid counter-battery fire, like I said. Limiting the vehicle's vulnerability is another advantage that the fast Rhino chassis gives the Whirlwind over slower or static artillery. Some chapters equip each Whirlwind with a servitor specifically programmed for the task of reloading. This helps speed up the process and reduces the vehicle's downtime between fire missions. Yeah. Get away from where you just fired something off from. Get to a safe, secure location, reload, and repeat.
So this thing only has to stop to reload.
Yeah.
Okay, and more than likely it stops to actually fire, but if it's in a battalion, it's probably just going to keep moving and fire.
Yeah, like stopping to fire is a quick process.
Yeah.
Like just get everything ready, step on the brakes, come to a complete stop. Like fire platform stable, fire. Move.
So, are we done with the lore? Or?
We have the construction, actually. So the chassis of each Whirlwinds are chosen from the Rhino production line in the same manner as Predators or Vindicators, when the omens indicate that the machine spirit of a newly constructed chassis would be best pleased to serve as a Whirlwind. The Master of the Forge will maintain a pool of between 20 and 30 Whirlwinds, although this can vary considerably from chapter to chapter. By Imperial standards, individual Whirlwind missiles, like much of the Space Marine equipment, one word, contain advanced systems that make them far more efficient. This is necessary to make up for their lack of numbers. For example, a high explosive Helios pattern Whirlwind missile contains a proximity fuse in its nose cone. The fuse is a photoelectric reaction. There is an active sensor in the missile tip, which emits an infrared light source, which is reflected back from the target and into the missile's photoelectric receptor cell, thus triggering the fuse and the warhead's detonation. This usually occurs when the missile reaches about 5 meters from the target. Should the missile miss its target altogether, or the proximity fuse malfunction, then the missile contains a self-destruction timer. This comes into action about 1 minute after firing to blow the missile apart. This failsafe avoids the potential of live ammunition littering a target area during a subsequent attack. Lost my place. Okay. This failsafe avoids the potential of live ammunition littering a target area during a subsequent attack. As a final piece of insurance, there's also a standard impact fuse, which functions in the event of a direct hit.
Hits a pigeon. Just explodes.
I would hope not, but yeah. The proximity fuse means the Helios Whirlwind missile will detonate close to a target, as well as in the event of a direct hit, exploding 5 to 10 meters above the ground in an airburst and showering the area with shrapnel. This is achieved at the expense of armor-penetrating power against armored vehicles. All non-AA Whirlwind missiles are tube-launched, spin-stabilized, free-flight, unguided projectiles. So it means they're rockets. The fuel burn from each missile is always the same. So the only way to adjust the missile's range is to adjust the launch trajectory during fire. A simple and fast method of retargeting.
These things seem like crap.
Yeah, kinda. Like, the idea of having a...
The Hypronus couldn't shoot down an Ork aircraft.
Yeah, you couldn't shoot down Ork bombers. The minefield one sounds like a cool idea, but honestly, it's very niche. you're not going to use it a ton. I think that an Imperial Fist player could have a ton of fun with that. You know, like every time you see an enemy advancing towards you, just pepper the area in front of them with an instant minefield.
Yeah.
Could be real fun.
So if you want a narrative game, do something like that. You can actually go through the White Dwarfs and find the minefield rules.
Yep, they're still in there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the Dangerous Worlds guide for 8th edition. There's a gnat flying around you.
Yep.
So, about the vehicle itself, it's 33 tons, so slightly heavier than a Rhino. Same profile as a Rhino, it's bigger because of the Whirlwind missile pod.
Yep, slightly taller.
Goes from an elevation of 0 to 55, no surprise there.
Yep.
It can freely spin its turret.
It's 2 kilometers slower.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah. Then we have the other variant of it. This is the Helios, which has 60 missiles stored inside it, which it fires 6 and then has to reload each and every single time.
Yep.
So it can do a max of 10 bursts.
Yep.
Then we have the cluster rocket version of this thing.
The Hyperios.
Yep.
Yep.
Which has 40 missiles, which...
It fires in groups of 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird.
So.
Then we have the
There
old
you go.
tube missiles, which is adorable. I love this. It's so cute.
It's so much nostalgia seeing the old ones brought in.
Then we got all the different designs and everything. Honestly, I would cover this thing with camouflage and pray to the machine spirit that doesn't get hit.
Yep, camo nets. Just throw it everywhere.
You also get to see different chapters in here that you never see, like skull bearers.
Yeah, the war bearers.
Ooh, they like bearers, apparently.
The bearer.
Angels of Absolution, there we go. That's one of my
They're
favorites.
still around, yeah.
Yep. I like how during the Wrath of Magnus, there's a short story where the Dark Angels call in all of their successor chapters, and one doesn't answer, and they're the Purifiers. And it's a nod at the Sisters of Purification,
There you go.
which is a Space Marine chapter that shares a color scheme with, oh yeah, there's my Whirlwind missile pod.
Yep. Pew! Pew, 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 pew.
All right, so 11, 11, 10 for its armor makes sense because
Yep, it's a
trying to get out
standard
as
Rhino.
quickly as possible. I'm no military expert,
Yeah.
but I'm going to say this thing is bad.
Yeah, all the evidence points to it not being useful. When we're talking about anti-aircraft, mobility tends to not be the issue. The issue tends to be need. At least in the U.S. military, we put a very high premium on air superiority. So, like, you don't hear about American troops being bombed by enemy bombers because we blow up all the bombers before they get into the air.
And it's weird because Space Marines actually do have a few aircrafts.
Yeah, a
the
few
Land
versions.
Speeders, the Typhoon, the Tempest.
They have a dedicated interceptor fighter now.
Yeah, the Xiphon.
Yeah.
They have the Storm Raven, the Storm Talon, the Storm Hawk, the Storm Bird, the Thunderhawk.
Orbital assets.
Yeah, they have a ton of things for anti-aircraft. They don't need a tank to do it.
Yeah.
Especially being that you have to drop this tank with a Thunderhawk.
Yeah. There's a whole extra sequence you have to go into to have it. And could it be really useful? Yes, if you already had it. But you should probably establish air superiority before dropping your ground troops anyways.
So this reminds me of the same thing with the Dreadnought. If it's in a fortified position where it can just have its guns ready,
Sure, yeah.
it's great.
It's great, yeah. Drive it out, fires off all of its missiles, peppering targets and whatnot. Fantastic. The minefield one is super interesting to me, just from like a tactical standpoint. Just minefield on demand.
But you can also deploy this thing. You can deploy the turret by itself.
Yeah.
And we've seen that.
Yeah, you could just have it in the tarantula format that, like, once upon a time, Space Marines had access to.
They still technically do.
Technically?
Yeah, it's in Legends,
There we
but
go.
they did state that Legends was usable in match play. It's just not usable in tournaments.
Tournaments without permission.
Yeah. So they still have access
yeah.
to it.
Yeah, in which case, yeah, you don't need to bring everything else along with it.
And
I mean,
it seems like such a waste of a Rhino.
it kind of is, like, especially considering that it doesn't have a extended presence on the battlefield. because it must reload manually. It must get out of the way to do it. It has no secondary armament as standard. And if it gets into a direct firefight with something, it can't fight other vehicles. It's an anti-infantry vehicle and an anti-air vehicle in a faction that probably should have established dominance over the airspace ahead of time.
Or just has the Imperial Guard do it.
Yeah, or has any number of other ways of dealing with
Now,
infantry.
I am going to talk about this, and I know that this vehicle is in here.
Mm-hmm.
This thing
Yep.
kills Titans.
Yes.
This one is the best variant of the Whirlwind. And we'll get more into that as we find it in this book as well.
Yep, as we slog through.
But we're up to the Vindicator.
We're up to the Vindicator. Oh man, do I really want to talk about the Vindicator.
And how bad it is?
Shall we skip the lore portion?
I'm good with skipping the lore.
All right,
We know what it's
the
meant
Vindicator
for.
has a lot of lore behind it. If you all want to hear about that, that's a whole different thing. But it is a Rhino
With a siege gun.
with a siege gun with
And-
18 rounds of fire on
Oof.
the Demolisher Cannon, and the Demolisher Cannon canonically is the same one that we saw in the Lehman Russ videos with the
So we
Thunderer.
We already discussed it.
Yep, we've already discussed it. This is essentially just the Space Marine version of the Thunderer. It is meant to be used in, and just real quick, rubble choke streets.
Yeah.
This is for urban fighting and just blowing out the entire bottom 2-3 floors of a building to dig people out.
It also has the litany of destruction in it.
Yep, it's you have to have the tech manual with you. I like that we do get to see a Demolisher cannon separate from everything else.
I wish this was made into a terrain feature.
Yeah, I've always thought that would be real cool if they brought the Wall of Martyrs back.
Yeah.
But with extra things like fire positions and stuff like that for just big guns.
Yep, and here we see all the interiors of this, but again, it's the same thing as the
Thunderer.
Thunderer,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, the Thunderer and the Demolisher and the Vindicator they all hit the same note. Yes, it is a big gun. The Vindicator is cool because it is as fast as a Rhino.
Is it as fast as a Rhino? We gotta see that.
Yep, it's as fast. It is, I believe it's 68 kilometers an hour, I saw.
64. So it's slightly slower.
Slightly slower, but still very nippy, very quick. That's still...
It's still keeping up with the formation.
It's keeping up with the formation, which is the big thing, and it's a big siege gun. It's a big siege gun that can very quickly, relative to others, come round corners, fire on an entrenched position, and then get out. Which makes it kind of cool. The Vindicator has had a very checkered past in Warhammer lore of being nigh unplayable to being really, really good to nigh unplayable again.
in the same edition.
In the same edition with slight rules tweaks.
Yeah. The laser destroyer variant of it is really cool.
Yeah, that one's really cool. When you first got the ability to combine 3 Vindicators firing together and you got to use the
Yep.
Apocalypse template.
That was
it's just
super good.
This is obnoxious. I love it. It was so good. But yeah, it's a cool design. However,
Has
why?
all the weaknesses of a
Why?
Rhino.
It has all the problems of a Rhino. This thing is not meant to be fighting on the front line. Front Armor 13 is really cool in game terms, but practically...
Especially in an urban environment, you're just going to hit that side armor with a rocket.
You hit the side armor, you go through the roof, you've got ways of getting around it. It is very cool conceptually.
Or you just hit it with a landmine.
Yeah, again, it's like the Whirlwind. Conceptually, very neat concept. No, I don't want one.
If you need an urban answer to... okay, so here's the only way I think that this thing can be good.
Okay,
All right?
hit me.
If the Hive City itself has a void shield around it, you would have to deploy these things outside the Hive City and have it drive into the Hive City, because you can drive through a void shield.
Okay.
So long as you're moving slow enough that the void shield doesn't activate.
Sure.
I think you can move up to 25 miles per hour before a void shield kicks in.
Yeah.
So you still have to go very slow and through it.
Sure.
It's why missiles are used primarily to deal with Yeah, he's got a little dreadnought.
He's
next
got
to
his
him.
little dreadnought buddy. That's what he's good for. He's good for helping the dreadnought.
But if you need to do that because you can't bombard the area from
For
space,
whatever reason, yeah.
so it has its niche.
Sure, but that's the issue. It's the same issue I have with the Predator. There is a niche that the Predator fills. Sure. There's a niche that the Vindicator fills. Sure. There's a niche that the Whirlwind fills. Sure. Niches are not useful. Like, it is not
But
good to have
specialists
a...
are.
Like, a generalist is always better than a specialist. A specialist is always better than a monotasker. Like, a specialist can still do other things. A monotasker can't. This is a monotasker. It is good for exactly one type of warfare, in one type of environment.
It's kind of interesting that it itself is a siege weapon
Yeah.
versus its counterpart, which is the laser destroyer,
Which is a tank hunter.
which is a tank hunter, which
Yeah.
is way better.
Yeah, it's much better as a tank hunter because then, oh look, I'm a tank hunter. I can also fight heavy fortifications. This thing is not hunting tanks with a demolisher cannon.
I mean, in game wise,
In game wise, it could. In the lore that they build around it, of the demolisher cannon is a very heavy, ponderous weapon to fire. You have to be totally stable to fire it. You have to manually reload it. No, you're not fighting tanks with it. This is not some sort of ambush predator sort of thing, because it's also a super short range, which was the other issue with it.
Yeah, that was the big issue with the Thunderer.
Yeah, it's like you had a 24-inch range game-wise, and you were like within 100 meters to fire it, if I remember correctly from our Thunderer review. So, yeah, the things you want to hit from far away.
Yeah, the laser destroyer would just do it better.
Yep.
And a laser destroyer can destroy an entire building.
Yeah, I mean, when you only...
Find its main supports, shoot them.
Yeah, targeted tactical demolition is a thing. And that's why you don't need to level a building in one hit. You can level a building in one hit with a scalpel as opposed to a sledgehammer. Like, it all takes about... It's just knowledge and proper scans and planning.
So, Vindicator?
Vindicator fails. Vindicator gets a 2, honestly.
2.
Because, like,
And
a
what
Predator
about
at
the
least
Whirlwind?
can... Whirlwind gets a 3. Like, it's very interesting, but...
It fails at everything that it did.
It fails at everything that it wants to do. Like, do I think it would be really cool story-wise to have a Whirlwind running around with a convoy of Space Marines who are on the run from, like, an Ork bombardment of, like, fighters and Dakka jets? Yes. Though, like, I would love to play that scenario. However, it specifically calls out that's bad at that role.
Yep.
So, that's my problem.
Alright.
Yep.
Command Rhino. It's a Rhino with a command center in it.
Yep, everything from, like, reading the life signs of Space Marines that are in your unit. The Damocles Command Rhino was broken game-wise for quite some time. Like,
Still is.
It's always been just really solid. And command and control vehicles are a thing. And they are insanely useful for actual combat scenarios, because it's not a building. It can keep up with all the other tanks.
This one can go 45 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Again, it's the same thing as the Command Chimera.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's good. Like, having a command variant to a normal vehicle is good. Is
And
it going to be
the
fighting?
thing.
Yeah. Like, this thing's not going to be fighting anybody, but I think
No,
we
but it
actually
has
have an
teleport
X-ray.
homers. It has everything
Yeah.
it needs.
Like, this is just banks and banks of monitors and command chairs.
And again, it keeps right up. It doesn't need weapons because this thing would
It's not
be
meant
riding.
to be fighting.
Well, the funniest thing is it would be riding right next to Razorbacks.
Yeah.
Which would do the fighting for it.
Yeah, it could definitely, like, fall back, and it's a command vehicle, so a commander is inside of it. So that's a lieutenant or a captain that's inside of it.
Lieutenant for those in Europe.
Yes, lieutenant for those in Europe. Like, if you need a Space Marine to jump out and fight somebody, like, it can.
Yeah, it's a lieutenant after all.
Yeah, like, he's going to be fine. However, if your command infrastructure is being overrun, you have lost.
Yep.
It is time to escape and reconnoiter and figure something else out. But having scanner, radar, command and control elements all inside one vehicle, it's good.
And the fact that you can field multiple of these.
Yeah, so, like, you would run this I would say you'd run this with its own little cadre of a demi company. So each lieutenant gets one of these, and then the captain has one as well, or the captain's in a Thunderhawk watching over the battle area. Mm-hmm. And then you're
they
able
have
to
scout assets going around, like the land speeders.
Yeah.
Feeding information to them, which is then going to be spread throughout each of the companies.
Yep. And they even put in this one the Stormbolter remote control joystick for when you have a Stormbolter up on top.
Yep, because I always model it like that as well.
Yep. It's the winner's choice. But yeah, no, they're super interesting.
Super useful.
Super useful. Again, you don't need a Whirlwind because you have air superiority because you're Space Marines.
Using camo.
Yeah, look at them. Look at the smart, practical Marines. Look
Yep.
at them.
There's the Silver Skulls. I really like them. I almost went with them as a paint scheme. The
White consoles.
Those are cool. Alright, so we got a bunch of different variants here. Here's the Howling Griffins. And this is really useful for just painting guides.
Yeah, just having a fun idea to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, right.
And then we move on to its rules and everything. And this thing's actually cool because back in the day, it can have a lance, melt-a-torpedo, barrage bombs.
Yeah.
It could actually call in all of this.
Yeah, you called in your strike cruiser to fly in and do an orbital bombardment.
Yep.
Which is just, yes, that's what you use it for. You have air superiority.
Now, we're not going to talk about the Land Raider in this video because the Land Raider needs its own video. It's a different chassis after all.
It is a chonker.
It is a heckin' chonk. Alright, so there's the land speeders, and again, these things are atmospheric, so they can go in and out of the planet's surface.
Yep.
Not surface, atmosphere.
Atmosphere, yep. Up to 4,000 kilometers in atmosphere.
Yeah, which is insane. Oh look, there's the useless dreadnoughts.
Oh, look at them. Look at how sad they are.
Here's the other air fighter that they have, but I want to go over them in their own video.
Yep, yep. Get it later.
Oh, here we go. Now we're starting to get to the forces of the Inquisition, and we're going to skip past a good chunk of this. Space Marine formations, which is pretty much the exact same formation that we saw with the other ones.
Yep.
There are really stupid formations here, but
Yeah, these are essentially just battle drills showing how you would, like, combat formation. 4 phases of tactical squad assault on defense line. Yeah. Preparatory artillery strike. Suppressive fire to create breaches. And, like, everybody moves around. So these are mechanisms that you teach your soldiers and they practice together. And even things like just this, like having dismounted troops on the ground. They're checking for improvised explosive devices. They are checking houses for enemy combatants. Like, yeah. Like, this is, like, really kind
Standard.
of boring stuff to look at, but there is a premise for it, and
This
this
I
is the
like,
reason why you
though.
do it. Yeah.
combat formation.
Yep. Different phases.
So
I love that there's a just orc attack.
objective.
Objective.
Although in all fairness, we did that exact thing.
Well, yeah, it's it's simple. It works.
This
There's
will
a
all
reason
come
for it.
into hand. This will all come in handy when we plan our ground attack for an orc
Yes.
video. When we talk about how Space Marines would attack something, how Imperial Guard would attack something,
Yep.
and how Combined Arms would attack something. I will be doing how the Sororitas attack something, which is going to be fun. So we get to see the breakdown of a Space Marine company. We now know that each company has 20 to 30 of the asset tanks, like the Land Raider the part of their Destructor, the Vindicator, and all of them.
Yep.
Which is kind of cool, because now we can figure out per company what they have.
Yeah.
Again, another breakdown of a different chapter. This is an Ultramarines fourth company. Oh, this is with that new guy that just came out. This is his entire strike force.
Yeah, Mr. Tropic Thunderface.
Yeah.
Simple Jack, that's his.
Then we have the Doom Eagles and how they deployed, which in my opinion is much smarter because they deployed most of the assets in this.
Yep.
But going to the Forces of the Inquisition, we're not going to talk about the Land Raider because that's getting its own video. We're going to talk about the Rhinos. It's the same thing.
Yep, it's the exact same ones.
The Chimera is the exact same thing. Not going to talk about the Valkyrie. We already talked about those and how efficient they were. The Land Raider is the same, but there is one vehicle I do want to talk about. We're going to do Thunderhawk in its own video. Eventually we'll find it. Finally,
Here we go.
the Sisters of Battle.
Ta-da!
I knew we'd make it. No lore.
Rhinos, they're the same.
There we go. Some lore.
There we go.
We have the Immolator.
Would you like to take this one away?
Now you do it.
All right. In the 35th millennium, the Icaria Crusade was coming to an end. On the fringes of Ultima Segmentum, 30 years of exploration and conquest had claimed many worlds for the Emperor. On the world of Fornost, a force referred to in the sources as the Frateris Templars, captured an ancient factory complex. Aided by a Ministorum missionary team, the factory in detail... under missionary Morbin the Devout. They investigated the factory in detail, eventually discovering old databanks dating back to the Dark Age of technology. Morbin only reported his discovery to his superiors in the Ministorum. They knew this find would be greatly valued by the Adeptus Mechanicus, and kept the discovery on Fornost a secret, planning to use it as a future bargaining tool. That's interagency cooperation right there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. In subsequent years, the rulers of the Ministorum and Adeptus Mechanicus negotiated a deal. In return for the location of the database and free access, the Adeptus Mechanicus would allow the Ministorum exclusive claim to any new technologies the databanks stored. In the end, the only new design to be culled from the Fornosian databanks were half-completed files detailing a flamethrower tank. When these files were combined with STC designs for the Rhino already stored on Mars, the Immolator was created. The agreed contract meant the tech priests of Mars had to manufacture the vehicle exclusively for the Ministorum, who use it to equip the Adepta Sororitas. The Fornosian Accord still stands today, and the Immolator design is still jealously guarded by the Ministorum. Most Immolators are armed with twin heavy flamers, symbolic of holy flames for cleansing the tainted and unclean from the Emperor's worlds. Some Immolators, known as the Justice Pattern, are armed with fearsome multi-meltas. A few vehicles,
Pattern.
known as the Sanctus, are equipped with heavy bolters. In battle, the Immolator can carry a squad of Battle Sisters, deploying them close to an objective and then advancing to support them. Like all Sororitas vehicles, the machine spirits are protected by wards, sigils, and purity seals. Each vehicle is bedecked I say, with holy icons and relics to inspire the sisters in battle with a religious fervor. Doors and hatches are often cast to include the order symbol or the fleur-de-lis, the icon of the Adepta Sororitas. These are casts taken from the great Convent Sanctorum and Convent Prioris on Ophelia 7 and Terra itself. Deus Vult!
So, after all of that, what that means is they found this on a planet and they were like, ooh, that's ours now.
Yeah, ooh, we're not going to tell anyone about this. Hey, Admech, we'll give you something if you build it for us.
Alright, same stats as a Rhino, who would have guessed?
Yeah, it's a Razorback with different guns.
Now, it's kind of cool that it says 20 shots each, because that's 20 shots for this one, which has the heavy flamethrower, so it actually says 20 shots each flamethrower, so it's not as bad as the...
Yeah, it's not the 10 shots total that the other twin-linked weapons kind of get stuck in.
Now, unlike the Rhino and Razorback, the Rhino and Razorback, this one has a driver and a gunner.
Yep.
But we don't know who's inside. It might be a Space Marine.
Might be a Space Marine, who knows? There's also still the back top hatch, which the Razorback loses.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
because the weapon is up front, they still have access to get out in case the vehicle flips.
Yep.
And it has all the safety features and all the cool features of the Rhino.
Yep.
So, we get to the Immolator stats. It was pretty impressive back in the day. I think even here it had the invulnerable save that it would become famous for.
Holy Icon. Yeah, you could take the Holy Icon upgrade from Codex Witch Hunters.
Yep, which gave it the invo save.
Ooh, that's so old.
Yep, because they still had the 3rd edition book.
Yep.
They weren't updated for 4th. They actually weren't updated in 4th at all.
Yep. Fire points 1. One sister is contributing.
Yeah, but it's actually pretty cool that sister is also firing out of this. And this thing has a storm bolter, so it's...
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of hate coming out of this thing.
Yeah. And then we have the Exorcist, which this is what my pattern of it looks like. I took the Whirlwind Forge World missiles and put it on top of this. But go ahead and read this.
All right. With the exception of the Rhino, the Exorcist is the oldest vehicle in the service of the Adeptus Sororitas, with a long history stretching back to the age of apostasy. Some Exorcists in service today are the original vehicles from that period, and as such are greatly venerated. These are now ancient machines of war, and are barely understood by the Adeptus Mechanicus tech priests of today. Being so old, these Exorcists have a reputation as temperamental and difficult, like most Sisters of Battle, with a machine spirit that requires constant attention to prevent malfunction or corruption. It is only by constant work and prayer that these venerable Exorcists can still take to the field of battle. This is especially true of those Exorcists originally built on Mars, referred to as the Prioris pattern. With its proximity to Adeptus Ministerum's war efforts... with its proximity to Terra, these vehicles are regarded as the holiest of the Adeptus Ministerum's war machines, being blessed by the divine presence of the Emperor so close by, whilst the vehicle was constructed. Each is an individual work of art, lovingly engraved with images from an order's history, or illustrating the life of the Emperor. Each Exorcist is more than a battlefield weapon. It is a divine symbol of the Emperor's power. Other patterns of the Exorcist also exist, like the Sanctorum pattern, which remains a fearsome weapon of war, but the Ecclesiarchy don't consider them to be a potent symbol of the Emperor's power, like the earlier Prioris pattern. The orders militant of the Adeptus Sororitas use all patterns of the vehicle. Like the Immolator, the Exorcist is part of the Ministerum's unique canon of war machines, a tool for prosecuting holy war, and it would be inappropriate for other armed forces such as the great unwashed masses of the Imperial Guard or the Space Marine chapters with their deviant customs and worship of patriarch figures to have access to a holy weapon and risk tainting the machine spirits or incurring the displeasure of the Emperor. So down with the patriarchy, huh?
Yeah, quite literally.
Apparently.
So this thing has what?
48 missiles.
Damn. So it's carrying a lot more than the Whirlwind.
Yeah, did some of the Whirlwind ones. And it's got the fun little tube launchers.
And it could have this launcher, and it can have this launcher as well. In other lore for these things are what they roll out to kill Titans.
Yep.
We know their effectiveness in the battle since 3rd edition. They have been amazing.
Ooh.
So, the Immolator. What does the Immolator get?
So Immolator, it's a Razorback that can have
multi-meltas
and heavy bolters and heavy flamethrowers. So it's a close-range infantry support. I still think that's worth considering, especially since you only have 6 individuals responsible for riding around in it, same as the Razorback, but it is Adeptus Sororitas, so they like really aggressive tactics. It is still a very fast vehicle. I think it still gets the same grade as the Razorback out of 7.
All right.
Yep.
Now the Exorcist.
Part of me wants to say that it gets the Whirlwind's grade, but I know from experience that these things are just better in almost every regard.
Strength 8 AP1 missiles.
Yeah, heavy D6. Yeah, and it was also more heavily armored than the Whirlwind, because the Whirlwind was 11, 11, 10. These are 13, 11, 10. So these are direct fire platforms. So I'd give them a 6. 6 going on 7. Yeah, I think they're better than the Whirlwind for sure, especially since this is back in the days of the Witch Hunter Codex, which was all about just, no, we're here because someone has been found guilty. The entire city block must go. It's no one was allowed to walk away from there. And we're going to get to that here in a second as well.
With the Repressor.
With the Repressor.
Actually, I should put the weapons on this thing.
I'm being repressed.
The Repressor, the most broken tank at the start of 8th edition, and going into the end of 8th edition when it got super nerfed, thanks to me, And even as nerfed as it is now, it's still
still-
one of
it's
the
still
best
good.
transports in the game.
It's still good. All right, repressors.
Now, before we get into this, really quickly, I do
Yes.
want to point out that this is a full kit from Forge World of the Repressor. This is the actual kit. It is super bad. There are gaps in it. It doesn't place correctly. I have heat treated this thing 1,000 times just to get it into this base shape. And after that, I gave up and I tried to buy new ones. I have pestered Forge World for 6 years, asking them for 10 repressors every convention that I went to.
Yeah.
It became such a joke that I would show up and ask for them that they would say no prior to me showing up. Like, I would look at them and they'd just be like, there's no repressors here. In fact, I'm very well known at Adepticon for it. But anyway, let's get into the
Anyways.
lore.
So, like all Adeptus Sororitas vehicles, the repressor is another variant of the standard Rhino chassis.
chassis.
Rando chassis. Woo, this episode's long. Extensively converted by extending the transport compartment, including firing slits for the passengers' weapons and adding a small forward turret and new cupola. The repressor has a distinctive appearance. It looks weird, is what it's saying.
It's like a bus.
It does. It looks like you took the back half of a chimera and just duct taped it onto a rhino.
Yeah.
It is only within the last millennium that the Adeptus Sororitas have been using the repressor. Originally, the vehicle was issued to the Adeptus Arbites for crowd suppression, equipped with a large dozer for clearing a path through riding mobs, with a cupola-mounted water cannon or a grenade launcher for firing. For firing stun and gas grenades. Come on now.
Oh, sorry, they're not the police force of today.
Oh, not my rights. The first incidents of the Adeptus Sororitas using the repressor was during an uprising on the cardinal world of Avignor, when a crowd of over 1 million pilgrims gathering for the Day of Ascension rituals were incited agent provocateurs of a heretic faction into writing. I think they missed the word by in the middle of that sentence.
Yeah, they
were
did.
incited by agent
They
provocateurs.
also spelt a few things wrong for The Exorcist.
Oh, but yeah, there was a marine equipment one word earlier, so
Yeah. You can tell where they stopped caring.
it's a lot of words. I've read them. It's so many words, the best words.
The bigliest of
The
words.
bigliest words. Anyways, so where the local Adeptus Arbites precincts found themselves overrun as the enraged crowds armed themselves with captured and scavenged weapons. Disorder and rioting became a full-scale battle as the agitators began to direct the mob's actions. An armory was captured and the situation deteriorated out of the Adeptus Arbites' control. In need of aid, the Battle Sisters of the Order of the Sacred Rose Preceptory, guarding the Cardinal of Avignor's palace, offered to assist the besieged Arbites precincts. The Battle,
That's 10,000 sisters, by the way.
the Battle Sisters crewed a dozen of the Arbites repressors, first replacing the non-lethal weaponry with their own favorite heavy flamers, and took to the streets to purge the heretics and their followers from the holy ground of Avignon. 2 weeks of street fighting eventually saw the uprising defeated, with the Sisters of Battle repressors proving their worth. Following the victory, the Canoness Preceptor was gifted all the surviving repressors by the commanding Arbites Marshal. For years after the Avignor battle, only the Sisters of the Sacred Rose used the vehicle, and other orders within the ecclesiarchy whispered that it was not just or holy, and that the order should be restricted to the same rules as the others. The issue came to a head when the 291st Synod Priors of Terra debated the use of the repressor by the Order of the Sacred Rose. After a heated exchange, it was eventually agreed that the victory of Avignor had been the Emperor's divine will. And because of this...
Because gremlins.
Because gremlins and heavy flamers. And because of this, the repressor should be included in the canon of sanctioned vehicles. From that day forward, all orders were given access to the repressor. Unlike the Rhino, the repressor is not considered a frontline combat vehicle, but is used as an armored personnel carrier at need. During street fighting, the modified transport compartment allows the sisters to fight effectively from inside the vehicle without being exposed to enemy fire from buildings. Urban combat,
Does it have more?
like
No.
riot.
It's a riot suppressor.
It's a repressor. No, it is a Rhino with a flamethrower, an extra Stormbolter, and
It's
an armored carapace.
significantly slower, though.
Oh yeah, so it maxes out at 34 miles an hour. So,
Still isn't bad.
still not bad, especially since it is an armored personnel carrier for riot suppression / urban environment fighting, where a heavy flamethrower would be very useful.
And you can take 2 of them.
Yeah.
And still keep it Stormbolter.
It's pretty nice, and the Stormbolter being in an armored cupola is actually a nice little touch. If you are in a urban environment, you don't want to expose yourself to unnecessary fire, hence the firing slits, which, considering we know what the inside of a Rhino looks like, and these are raised up higher, I don't know if there's an internal view, because if there is, that'd be real cool. Come on. Nope, no such luck. But more than likely, there is a... so in siege warfare and trenches, you install something called a firing step, so that you can stand normally inside the main body of a trench or a defensive fortification, and when you want to fire, you step up onto a little platform, which brings you at level with your firing slit or your loophole, whatever you're shooting through. Having something like that means that you get to stay down out of the line of fire of any incoming fire until it's your turn to shoot. You stand up, you fire off a couple of bursts with your Inferno pistol, any sort of hand flamer you may have, or bolt guns.
This thing's a full 6 feet taller than the Rhino.
Yeah, and it kind of looks it too.
Yeah. It definitely stands taller than it and bigger than it thanks to its dozer blade.
It is the bigliest of boys.
Yep.
Bigly boy.
Well, in this case, girl.
Bigly girl. Apologies.
Thick girl. Alright,
So,
so
yeah.
push those off to the side.
Yeah, dozer blade and everything for, peacefully moving civilians out of the way.
Yeah, peacefully.
I mean,
Into pieces.
yep. Yeah, the idea of taking a repressor and then throwing some retributors into it and just making life really bad for anybody who's standing in the open. Yeah.
Alright, so as a modern day tank,
No. No. Hard no. This thing is used exclusively for violating the Geneva Convention. This is excessive. This is not a riot suppression vehicle. That was the mob has turned to an armed insurgency. Cool. You threw a flamethrower on a tank and killed a bunch of pilgrims. This is... We're talking investigations and all this stuff.
I'm pretty sure the Sisters of Battle violate the Geneva Convention.
I'm pretty sure. It's just... It is ludicrous. I understand the need to put a firing ports on there. As a riot suppression vehicle, I think this thing is really cool if this is a water cannon. I think it's an awesome concept. I've actually been trying to convert one up because I know the Forge World kit is so terrible. But I want to set one up for my Palatine Enforcers for Necromunda.
That's fair.
With the water cannon, because I think that'd be real cool. It's weird. It's a weird thing that's slow. For its task, it does amazing work. In dense, hive worlds and enclosed environments, sure.
Compared to the...
Deep breaths.
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing at the fact that it just violates the Geneva Convention.
That's all it's used for.
What's funny is it actually had more armor thanks to its RAM, which I don't think it had here just yet, but in the Witch Hunter Codex, the RAM gave you +2 armor in your front.
Yep.
Or is the main rulebook that gave it to you?
No, it was Codex specific because ramming was a thing you could do.
Yeah.
So the dozer blades added 2 for the purposes of ramming people.
Yep.
Which was what made the Vindicator fun for a little bit, was it became armor 15 when it rammed someone.
Yep. But on a scale of 1 to 10, look, you can even see where they had to do it.
Yeah. There's...
Theirs is green stuff too.
Yep.
Oh, that annoys the crap out of me.
It's such... It is old.
It is a garbage kit.
It is a very old, very dated kit. This thing gets... Like, it... For practical usage in a modern military environment, no. For a tool used by, like, a totalitarian government to, like, suppress its citizens, oh yeah, no, this would totally work. But it is slow. It is meant to be driven into the middle of crowds and then to fire indiscriminately. Like, yeah, we see this sort of, like, riot suppression tactics used in the modern day. With water cans and things like that on top of MRAP.
We saw this used like a couple of weeks ago during
Yeah, no, and it's a real world issue that, like, not just America deals with, but, like, the militarization of police forces is a real issue that we can discuss at a later date. But as far as on a holy site pilgrim world to protect essentially a cardinal, seems excessive.
Seems repressive.
Seems a little repressive. So I'm going to give it a military realism fail.
Out of 10?
Out of 10, gets a 4. Like, it's...
Fair.
Like, could you find a niche situation in which it would be useful? Yes.
I honestly... Like, even with everything, it would be used as the same as the Annihilator.
Yeah.
It has 2 flamethrowers and a storm bolter versus the 2 heavy bolters. It can transport 10, so it can transport a full squad. So if it was faster...
Yeah, I think it would be fine.
Yeah,
it's the fact that it's so slow is the issue.
Yeah, because going down from 70 to 55, and that's a difference of 10 miles per hour. That's big.
Yeah, that's fairly standard, especially when everyone else in your faction
is outspeeding you.
now. So, yeah, you're slowing formations down, and in a sort of like civil disturbance riot situation, if you need to suppress somebody, you need to be fast. You need to get to where they are before they do damage.
Also, if you guys have this book, Volume 3, The Tauros Campaign, and wish to donate it to the channel so that I can continue this series, please contact me.
Let us know.
But the Repressor has a special place in my heart. It is my favorite sororitas vehicle. I have 12.5 of them. Because at the beginning of 8th, I tabled people with just Repressors.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
It is an absolutely disgusting, broken vehicle. It is amazing. It gets a ton of attacks in close combat. And for me, it'll always be in my heart. But practically, it is a bad vehicle.
It'll be in the nightmares of its victims.
Funny enough, there is no command vehicle for the sisters. I assume they take the command Rhino.
Yeah, I mean...
But yeah. So, that's pretty much all we're going to cover in this episode, which I might split up to 2 episodes. I'm not sure yet. I want to see how this breaks down.
Yep.
But we just covered every Rhino variant that is in here. There are other Rhino variants that we did not cover, such as the Hunter and the Stalker. We did talk about them, but we didn't cover them.
Yep.
There's also the Laser Destroyer, which we didn't properly cover, though we think it's really good.
Yes.
There's
the Demios pattern Rhinos, which got different rules in 7th edition when 30K started releasing them as kits.
Yep.
The Relic Command Rhino and Land Raider duo that you could take at one point.
Yep.
They're everywhere. They're hidden all throughout. The Las Plaz Talon one for Dark Angels, like that was not in this one. So yeah, there's a few that were added in the 20-odd years since this book came out.
But as always, I want to thank you, Sterling, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Space Marine vehicles, are they any good?
Some kind of.
Oh, just wait until we get to the Land Raiders.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big oof and something that pisses off everybody.
It's going to hurt so bad.
Yeah. So, as always, thank you guys for joining me. If you enjoy this series, please be sure to subscribe. Also, like this video if you enjoy it. Comment in the comment section down below telling us that you're a military historian yourself and that we are wrong about everything. That seems to be the theme with these videos.
It's great. It's great.
It really
sometimes.
is. It really is.
Yep.
Comment in the comment section down below. Follow me on all sorts of links in the description down below. Check out my Patreon. As always, I'm NornQueenAlexis. I love you guys. Bye.